You can't name this tune? What kind of gay man are you? Mr. District Attorney, if you could join us on the stage. Thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our 2024 Westside Town Hall for the 47th Senate District. I'm your State Senator, Brad Hoylman-Sigal. I am very pleased to be joined by my colleagues on the stage. As you know, the 2024 Westside Town Hall is a follow-up to the 2023 Westside Town Hall. And our district, which is the 47th, runs from all the way from Christopher Street and Greenwich Village up to West 103rd, or as we like to say on our team, from the gay bars to Zaybars. Yes. And we've all been looking forward on my team for this event. So I'm so grateful that you decided to spend a beautiful, beautiful Sunday afternoon with us to discuss important issues to the West Side and the entire city and state. Really, it's your commitment to local community organizing and issues that I think inspires my colleagues and me as we pursue our agenda in Albany, City Hall, and elsewhere. Speaking of team, I want to introduce my team, many of whom you know. They have made today possible. Sam Vasquez, the man behind the curtain. Evan Lieberman, who has been our Community Board 7 liaison. Jake Asher, who handles our communications. Gabrielle Bruner, our legislative counsel. Caroline Wexelbaum, our budget director. Esther Caroline, who is our new CV7 liaison and just started today. Esther, where are you? We've got amazing interns who are here, Audrey Ho and Izzy Ballard. And here in spirit, it says in spirit, they haven't gone anywhere, but Jonah Rose, who was invaluable in helping put together this event. Our scheduler in Albany, Megan Nelasco, and our social worker, Stephanie Shatino, who have done amazing work. And of course, the team at the American Museum of Natural History, Dahini Sampura, who's the Director of Government Relations, and our main point of contact. Thank you very much. Big round of applause. Sophia Rivera, our Government Relations Associate for the American Museum of Natural History, and Dan Slippen, who's the Executive VP, who's been tremendous in helping us organize it. So thank you to all of them. It's such an honor to be here at one of the most iconic institutions in the city, and in fact, the entire nation. And if you haven't heard yet, Town Hall attendees have the bonus today of being able to explore the museum's standard exhibitions for free after this event, so please take advantage of that opportunity. I know that my 7-year-old is doing that as we speak. I do want to thank the museum for not just having us today, but for working with us officially, particularly Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal and Councilmember Brewer, for helping us move an early voting site from the very busy William O'Shea Educational Campus, where early voting interrupted classes, to here, the museum, the American Museum of Natural History, which is now our new early voting site, starting October 26th. And I'd also like to thank the organizations that are here tabling outside, including the Upper West Side Coalition of Block Associations. Let's give them a round of applause. The Legal Aid Society, round of applause for all they do. Midtown Community Justice Center, the American Jewish Committee, and our New York State Controller, where you can seek unclaimed funds if you perhaps lost that deposit with Con Edison. The controller can help you get that back, and you can go out there and get it on the spot, as I understand it. And today we're going to hear about leaders and experts from our community talk about issues that are important to us from those very organizations. But we're going to hear from a number of elected officials who are going to give us greetings, and then we're also going to hear from those specific organizations. Ellen Davison, staff attorney for the Legal Aid Society, she's going to explain how good cause eviction protections work. Next, we're going to have a presentation from Danielle Mendez, who's the project director from the Midtown Community Justice Center. He's going to talk about micromobility and how e-bikes can hopefully safely share the streets with pedestrians. And then finally, we're going to hear from Marisa Barrick, the assistant director of the American Jewish Committee, for a discussion on how we can address the rise in anti-Semitism that we've seen so painfully impact this community, but all across the state and nation. Then we're going to have a quick presentation and hopefully answer any questions you might have about Proposal 1, also known as the Equal Rights Amendment for the state of New York, which is going to be on your ballot this November. That's going to be led by Sasha Ahuja, who's the campaign director for New Yorkers for Equal Rights. And finally, we're going to open up to your questions and comments where you can ask us anything, anything that's on your mind. Before that, again, I want to thank my team for all of their work. And again, those special interns, Izzy, Audrey, Avi, Jen, and Chris. All those interns have worked over the summer, and they are college students and high school students. They kept our office running, answering phones, helping constituents solve problems, and yes, help us keep up to date with what's cool with the kids these days. So our interns did something pretty amazing, and there you can subscribe to our e-newsletter. You can just click on that QR code. But our interns did something pretty amazing. In addition to all the work they did, they went out across the 47th district and scanned illegal cannabis stores in our district to try to help us locate where they are. This is a photographic representation of what they came up with. Oops. Yes, there they are, before they went out. Those are the interns. And this is what they found. Look at that. Those were 89 storefronts that they surveyed. Now, we didn't ask them to go in and purchase illegal cannabis, of course. But we definitely have isolated about 17 that are flagrantly advertising illegal cannabis. And we've shared that information with the Office of Cannabis Management and the New York City Sheriff's Office, and hopefully they're in the process of being investigated. So let's hear it again for our summer interns for all that work that they have done. Now, before we get further underway, I'm going to turn things over to Sean Decatur, who is the president of the American Museum of Natural History. I had the pleasure of hosting President Decatur in Albany earlier this year and honoring him on the New York State Senate floor as a small gesture to show how much we appreciate the work that he and his team do to educate the public. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I welcome to his own stage, Sean Decatur, President of the American Museum of Natural History. I don't think he wants to stand in front of the cannabis shop.
Yes. No, thank you for that. I was actually wondering, that would be a first for me in terms of posing in front of the illegal cannabis stores. So first, thank you, Senator Hoylman-Sigal, not only for that warm Thank you, Senator Hoylman-Sigal, not only for that warm introduction and welcome, but for your support of the museum over the years, sort of dating back. The Senate in helping move forward the state's decision to support the restoration of the museum's roofs on 77th Street, which was an amazing to have that financial support for this project, and really important for support of the museum. And I'd also like to thank Assembly members Linda Rosenthal and Tony Simone for your continued support, and District Attorney Bragg, it's just great to have you here with us as well. And if I could just say a little bit about the museum at this point in time. I feel that every day, and it's probably shared in this room, I wake up to new news of generally awful things happening around us, whether it is new evidence of the impact of climate change on all of our lives, whether it's more news about biodiversity loss, more news about threats to our health and well-being. And I'll say that's just the science news. If we turn to other things, then certainly there's news about the increasing economic, social, political polarization. And then after reading the headlines, I have the joy of coming to work here at the museum and watching folks queue up every morning, folks from nearly every continent around the world, school children that are here on field trips, who are coming to a place that's dedicated to inquiry, to discussion, to learning every day, and to not only that, but to inquiry and discussion about many of the critical problems that we are facing, whether it's the challenges of bringing science to a broader public audience. And I'd say one of the things that gives me hope is that there exist places for that common ground of people to come together and to engage in a sense of inquiry and discovery, and that we can have that here in our neighborhood here in New York. And I'm incredibly grateful not only for the opportunity to extend that in the hosting events like this, but in also being an early voting site so that we can actually sort of continue to play a role that's essential to the civic fabric of our community. And just very grateful for the support of all of you for the museum and its efforts. And I do encourage you to, after this is over, to go and explore the museum, especially the Gilder Center, which opened a little over a year ago, and check out the exhibits, the insectarium, the other things that you can enjoy here at the museum. So again, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator Hoylman-Sigal, for your support, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, President Decatur. And there's the agenda for today, and we're going to get started right away with a quick survey of some of the work that we've been up to over the past year, my colleagues and I, namely on the budget, as the President Decatur alluded to. We did pass a pretty hefty budget this year, $237 billion for the next fiscal year. There were investments in fighting climate change, funding mass transit, providing resources for universal pre-K and public schools, expanding tax credits for families with children. The budget also, I'm very pleased to say, included a number of initiatives that I helped lead, which we were successful at. One is called the Local Journalism Tax Credit, which first in the nation proposal. California just copied us, by the way, but it's going to provide $90 million in tax credits to help local media outlets like the West Side Rag, I hope, to hire and retain local journalists. Very proud of that. We've seen the demise of local news. We've seen the consolidation of national news. We've seen the New York Times, some would argue, walk away from New York City. So we need our local journalists more than ever. Second is a bill that I worked on with Assemblywoman Rosenthal, who knows it extremely well, which will finally allow New York City to lower its own speed limits. It's called Sammy's Law, in honor of Sammy Cohen-Eckstein, a young man, 12 years old, who was struck in Brooklyn and killed. And I want to thank Assemblywoman Rosenthal for getting that through the Assembly, and Assembly Member Simone for all of his support as well. Third, we're happy to have included a proposal that we fought for alongside District Attorney Bragg that's going to add 23 new offenses that can be charged as hate crimes. That was also in our state budget. And I also worked with the district attorney on making e-fencing a crime. E-fencing is when you effectively steal items and put them on a platform to resell. New York's law up until now had a loophole where you actually had to physically possess the item to be charged. Now, the platform, the person who facilitates the transfer of the goods to the online platform can be charged as well. They don't have to possess the item any longer. So we hope that does something about the smash and grabs that you've seen across the 5 boroughs. I think you know, through some of the efforts that the district attorney and others have taken, we've given the NYPD the authority to padlock and shut down illegal cannabis shops. Again, Assemblywoman Rosenthal did great work in supporting affordable housing efforts. One of the efforts that I helped lead was making certain that if we're going to subsidize affordable housing, we're going to subsidize the developers who are building it, we need to make sure that their work is audited. That's called 421A, and we have now required existing 421A projects to ensure compliance with the affordable housing requirements. There were dozens of scandals around this program over the years. This auditing hopefully will put the brakes on that. $150 million to build affordable homes, and then you're going to hear more about the good cause eviction protections for market rate tenants later in the afternoon. We passed landmark gun safety legislation, one of the bills of mine, along with 83 other bills. The Stop Hiding Hate Act, which is going to require online platforms like X to account to the New York State Attorney General instances of hate on their platforms and what they did about it. Happy about that. The Wild West Moped Crisis legislation. That's a little bit of a breathless description, but I'll say that we did pass legislation that's going to require the gasoline-powered mopeds to actually be registered at the point of sale, meaning you can't buy a gasoline-powered moped without a license plate, and we hope that helps NYPD with enforcement. An issue close to home for me is called the Dyslexia Diagnosis Act, and why is that important? Well, if you have a child with dyslexia, as my husband and I do, you have to get a neuropsychological exam. Those exams cost anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000. Insurance doesn't pay for that. Our bill will mandate health insurance in New York to pay for neuropsychological. Waiting for that to be signed by the governor, and then the Safe Landings Act, which is a bill that we came up with at a hearing on family court as chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. That bill's important because orders from judges for young people who are in foster care need to be executed sometimes after the child leaves foster care. Up until now, they had not. So if you're over 18 and a judge says you are entitled to, for example, addiction treatment, up until now, you wouldn't get that treatment if you aged out. With this bill, should the governor sign it, you will. So very happy about that. Our Grieving Families Act, I talked about that last year. That's a bill that's going to make certain that New York's wrongful death statute is in line with the 47 other states who count non-economic damages when you have a loved one who's killed, for example, at a construction site or in a limousine, or might die in a hospital due to someone else's negligence. In New York State, our statute was written in 1847 when James W. Polk was president of the United States. We haven't updated it since then, and if you're in that horrible position of having to file a wrongful death case against a hospital, for example, the only compensation you're entitled to is what your loved one's economic value is to society, meaning how much money they made at their workplace. Nothing else is considered. Love, consortium, guardianship, but it is in 47 other states, so we hope that the governor will finally sign our bill. We modernized HIV testing. My colleagues here, Assemblymember Simone and Assemblymember Rosenthal, worked with me on HIV prior authorization and prohibiting co-payments for PrEP and PEP. That's the life-saving drug that prevents HIV transmission. Some local priorities. We added 28 new family and civil court judges because of the extensive backlog in family court, where children are literally being torn apart from their families due to the delays that some of them face, up to a year or longer. We established a Parkinson's disease registry, working with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, where individuals who have Parkinson's can voluntarily contribute their demographic information to a database, which is going to help researchers hopefully find a cure and allow them access to Parkinson's disease information. That's important. Our Fashion Workers Act has not yet been signed by the governor, but it would provide labor protections to fashion models, just like the fashion models in California have. In New York, they're subject to a loophole and they don't have those protections. Assemblymember Simone and I passed a bill that's going to officially allow absentee ballot drop boxes throughout the state of New York, so you don't have to wait in line. You can just hopefully just drop your ballot in. And then finally, the Seinfeld bill, which I think it's better that we have a video to, so you can understand what I mean.
Excuse me 1 second. Hello?
Would you be interested in switching over to TMI long distance service?
Oh, gee, I can't talk right now. Why don't you give me your home number and I'll call you later?
Sorry, we're not allowed to do that.
Oh, I guess you don't want people calling you at home.
No.
Well, now you know how I feel.
That's our Seinfeld bill. New Jersey passed it last year. We passed it this year. It's going to require telemarketers to identify who they are within 30 seconds of calling you, like they did Jerry. And then with the help of Stop the Chop, some of the members might be here today, Assemblymember Simone and I worked on finally moving that west side helipad off of the park by 2026. And hopefully we'll see some relief from chopper noise and the inconvenience that they pose to users of the Hudson River Park in the future. And then we renamed the Christopher Street subway station, the Christopher Street Stonewall Station. Mr. District Attorney, this is not from the Stonewall State. A replica. But very happy to do that because Stonewall, of course, the birthplace of the modern LGBTQ rights movement. And I want to thank Assemblymember Glick for her work on that. Coming up, some of our efforts include our Older Adult Resource Fair, which is going to happen on Tuesday, the 8th of October at Goddard Riverside. Thank you to my colleagues here who are co-sponsoring it. We have new resource guides available for you, an older adult resource guide. It used to be called a senior resource guide, and then I became a senior, so I'm like, it should be older adult. And our family resource guide, which is available out on the table for you. Now, we have a shredding event on October 10th, something that is extremely popular here on the West Side. I chanced upon this very sad situation where somebody's personal information was strewn all along 6th Avenue. And there was a gentleman there who was going through it. So that's our message. Don't let this happen to you. Come to our shredding event on October 10th October 10th at 97th Street in Columbus. Some mega projects that we're all working on. Penn Station redevelopment, trying to get that train station up to world-class standards as it should be. The Port Authority bus terminal is going to be renovated. My colleagues and I are working on that to get a lot of those buses off of our side streets. Gateway is, of course, that rail tunnel that's going to be built under the Hudson. We're going to see some casino license applications in our district. Like it or not, they're going to apply. And proud to announce that we have $108 million for 124 permanently affordable housing at West 20th Street at the Bayview Women's Correctional Facility at West 20th Street. That's a really positive development for affordable housing. I want to thank Governor Hochul for her leadership there. And we're going to look at new affordable housing right across the street on 11th Avenue, across from the Intrepid. Legislative priorities. We're fighting climate change. New insurance requirement, our Fashion Sustainability Act. Assemblywoman Rosenthal and I are working on electrifying the Manhattan cruise ship terminal to get rid of carbon emissions. We have new gun safety legislation Assemblywoman Rosenthal and I are working on to stop the transfer of files to make what are called ghost guns, or guns that are printed at home with a 3D printer. There's a story about it just today in the New York Times. We're working on legislation to protect New Yorkers from abuses, particularly in the workplace, from artificial intelligence. And we're going to work to get congestion pricing back online, because that's $1 billion a year our mass transit system needs, and we've already invested over $600 million just in the cameras alone. So let's turn the cameras on. And then a few more items, and you're going to hear about this later. Assemblywoman Rosenthal and I are working on insurance requirements for e-bikes that deliver goods and services. I'm working on a bill that's going to institute zero tolerance for cutting a padlock at an illegal cannabis shop. Make that a crime as it should be. Daylighting for safer streets to make our intersections safer for pedestrians and cyclists alike. We're going to try to get cameras in the courtroom. Did you know that New York State is the only state in the nation where our courts do not allow cameras? Only state. Oh, I'm sorry, Louisiana being the other. But we're not exactly in the same league. My Medical Aid in Dying Act, I hope to get to the floor for a vote that's going to provide terminally ill New Yorkers the opportunity to hasten their death if they have 6 months or fewer to live. 10 states in the District of Columbia have that law. We're working on easing quorum requirements for our community boards. I've been working with Community Board 7 on that issue. We have a proposal that I hope to advance in the budget to end what's called the commercial rent tax, an unfair tax on small businesses south of 96th Street, basically our district. They have to pay extra, and that's not fair. The other boroughs don't have that tax on small businesses. And we're taking on sidewalk sheds, hopefully with a bill that is going to allow you to file a nuisance claim against a sidewalk shed that has been standing way too long in your neighborhood. And speaking of sidewalk sheds, we have a special announcement in that regard. We are introducing an initiative from my office called the Sheddies. The Sheddies. The Sheddies is an award that is a facsimile of human excrement, I believe. And it will allow you to nominate the most annoying, disgusting, loathsome sidewalk shed in your neighborhood, and hopefully my office and our colleagues can take action on it. As they say, it's an honor just to be nominated. Next, we're going to hear from our many elected officials who are here, and I want to thank them all for their time this afternoon. First up is our amazing District Attorney. You're familiar with his work, as is the rest of the nation. District Attorney Alan Brown.
I'm so proud to be a Manhattanite. After all that great work, I'm so proud to be on the Upper West Side, and so proud to work alongside all of these great folks, including, of course, our great state senator. I wanted to talk about just relatively briefly, five areas where the senator has just led in such a great way, and we've partnered. The first is guns. This is really a statistic that is all of ours. For the last 2 years, shootings in Manhattan are down about 40%. And that's due to obviously the NYPD, some of the laws that have been discussed, and in particular, both our senator and Senator Rosenthal have been leading on ghost guns, which our senator mentioned, these non-serialized guns, which make it very difficult for those of us in law enforcement to track. And while we are working to get the traditional guns off the street, those are obviously still a problem. We see this rising trend of these non-serialized ghost guns. You can literally sit at your kitchen table, you can buy a 3D printer for about $200 and print a ghost gun within about 5 hours. It is terrifying. And so I thank our state senator and our assembly member. I know it didn't pass this year, but we're going to redouble our efforts and hopefully get that passed next year. The second issue is hate crimes. It is an issue that we're actively working on. We went earlier in my tenure and got $1.7 million from the city council to expand our unit. We had 3 assistant district attorneys working on hate crimes. Now we have about 15 to 17. And it is just so shocking and troubling what we are seeing. Our hate crime docket is an all-time high. We are bringing more cases than ever before. 40% of our hate crime docket is anti-Semitic crime. We are seeing assaults. We're seeing property damage. We're working side by side with the NYPD and bringing just more cases than ever before. The legislation, now actually the law that the senator talked about is going to be so helpful to us. The way our hate crimes law works is that you have to have an underlying crime and it is an enhancement. And the old law was just antiquated. For example, if one person assaulted you and they did it because of your religion, that could be an assault as a hate crime. If 30 people assaulted you because of your religion, we could not charge group or gang assault because it wasn't a predicate. And our senator and our senator fixed that. So we should thank them for that. The third issue is mental health, just on the way in. I know this is on everyone's mind. A couple of people were asking about this, and really everyone sitting over there, I'm so thankful to for working on just what we see, whether it's open air drug dealing, whether it's homeless people in distress. At the district attorney's office, we announced 2 initiatives, $6 million of community navigators, people who themselves had these issues, been formerly unhoused, out walking our streets, connecting with people, providing services. Our senator stood with us, helped us, has been pushing that, really putting mental health at the forefront. Then we recently just started last month a $3 million initiative of people right in our courtrooms. When someone is arraigned and they leave court for whatever reason, someone from Fortune Society is there to ask them what they need, and we are seeing people who we know otherwise would not return being connected immediately from the courthouse to transitional housing, which reduces recidivism and advances public safety. So really thankful for your support on that. And just two other issues I saw on the 421A audit. I am so excited about that. We started a tenant protection unit, and our first set of cases, we have 6 cases under indictment for people who defrauded the 421A program. So we need that to help us in law enforcement. And lastly, our worker protection, which again, so just honored to work side by side with all these phenomenal electeds. When I got in, they said this is a priority. We've been working on it together, and whether it's the prosecution we did of the manager of Grimaldi's, or whether it's the prosecutions we've done of multi-million-dollar, it's just a basic contract, an honest day's work for an honest day's wage, and I'm so thankful to everyone for working alongside. I'm the new person in the club. We have so many years of phenomenal leadership over there. I'm just honored to join them. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. District Attorney. Now we're going to hear from a special message from our New York State Attorney General, Letitia James.
Today. It has been my honor and privilege to work with him, and it's my honor and privilege to speak before such civic-minded and engaged fellow New Yorkers. First, I want to say that each of you are fortunate to have such an incredible public servant as Senator Hoylman-Sigal, who represents you all. To have such an incredible public servant as Senator Hoylman-Sigal, who represents you in Albany. There are a great many issues facing this community, and our whole state must be addressed, and it's going to take all of government. And that's why it's been my honor and privilege to work with Senator Hoylman-Sigal side by side as we protect the state and protect reproductive rights, that we get guns off the streets. In fact, as of today, the Office of the Attorney General has removed over 7,000 guns. We protect children online and ensure that our sacred rights in defending our democracy are protected no matter what happens in Washington. We have seen individuals opposed to our freedoms gain traction in our political spaces. Radical agendas like Project 2025 are now playbooks for many seeking high office, and that is why having leaders like Senator Hoylman-Sigal is so important, that we recognize that no one is above the law, and that the law should be used both as a sword and as a shield to protect New Yorkers. Brad has been a friend and an ally in my fight to protect New Yorkers' rights. We work together to advance important legislation in Albany, including most recently 2 new laws that will help ensure children are better protected from the worst aspects of social media. And now, as we see the emergence of generative artificial AI, we must ensure government steps up to this challenge. So this new technology makes our lives better, rather than be used to scam investors or scare off potential voters. My office has been working on these issues, and I'm thrilled to have a partner like Senator Hoylman-Sigal in the corner for these fights. With Brad, I applaud your leadership in the state Senate and your commitment to working with your constituents and addressing their priorities. And I hope everyone enjoys today's town hall, and everyone is up on all of the issues facing New York. And again, I look forward to seeing all of you in person. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of it and for saying a few words. And I'll see you all soon. Thank you so much.
That's the most unassuming I've ever seen the New York State Attorney General. Next is someone who represents integrity in our local government, and boy, do we need more of that. New York City Controller Brad Leonard.
It is so great to be with you this afternoon. I just want to say, last time I got to see Attorney General Tish James in person was at the 9/11 memorial, and she leaned over, and Vice President Harris turned around and said, "Madam Attorney General." And I was just thinking, oh, that really sounds pretty like she says it. So we'll see, but I'm just saying. Anyway, it is great to be here with you this afternoon. I'm New York City Controller Brad Leonard, and I'm so proud to be with you as New York City's Chief Financial Officer. Anybody in the room, a public sector employee or retiree, a teacher, a public hospital nurse, somebody who serves in the city, thank you, thank you, thank you. Your pension is in great shape this year. We had 10% returns. We exceeded our threshold, requirement, our target, by $1.8 billion, which means your retirement security is safe. And we were able to put that money into supporting more teachers and parks and keeping our streets safe. And at the same time, we're getting those great returns. We're investing those pension dollars in things that really matter. So we made an investment that helped secure the 35,000 rent-stabilized units that were put at risk when Signature Bank failed. And they're delivering great returns and ensuring affordable housing for thousands of New Yorkers. So that's the work we're doing. We also have the most ambitious decarbonization plan of any public pension fund in the country. We've divested from fossil fuels. We're investing in climate solutions. So again, your pensions are safe, and we're helping with the climate transition. So that is pretty great. I love working with the greater Brad. We are always happy, honestly, to be mistaken for each other because the other, at least I am, I feel like I do so well. When people are like, oh, Brad, Senator, I know what you're doing. Two things I really am enjoying working with him on right now. One is around moped and e-bike safety, where he's a fundamental leader. We had a great event at the Center for Justice Innovation. This new legislation for enforcement at point of sale is critical. The legislation he's pushing to hold the apps more accountable, critical. With those things and better enforcement and some tweaks to infrastructure, we can get control back on our streets. He's leading. I'm pledged to be a partner. We also work together as part of New York Jewish Agenda, which is working on fighting anti-Semitism and hate crimes and making sure we keep this the city that we love and can keep safe together. For just 30 seconds, I will say, obviously, that what's playing out at City Hall right now is really disturbing. There's just no other way to put it. To have the police commissioner resign, the counsel to the mayor resign, no one in heading up the law department, drip, drip, drip of FBI raids and federal investigations. It is making it impossible for City Hall to deliver the things that New Yorkers really need, the safer, more affordable, more livable, better run city that we all deserve. So we're going to stay focused on making sure we provide that for all of you. So you'll see in the coming days from my office a new plan to end street homelessness for severely mentally ill people in New York City. We don't have to be a city where thousands of mentally ill people are sleeping on the subways or on the streets, cycling through Rikers and hospitals and back to the street, with a good continuum of care that includes more hospital beds, but also some housing first vouchers that get people the housing and care they need. We can get folks off the street into stable housing where they will not be a danger to themselves or others. So watch for that this fall. That is coming from my office. We'll have some new plans for more affordable home ownership, because it's got to be possible for working and middle class families to imagine they could afford a home in this city. When I talk to young people right now, they don't imagine they'd ever be able to buy here again. We have the examples of Mitchell Lama, of programs that made affordable housing possible. Together with your next assembly member, like Michael last year, we put forward a program called Homes for City Workers, a groundbreaking program that's going to make homeownership possible for the next generation of teachers and cops and firefighters, and watch out for that moving forward as well. And finally, I will for sure be putting out a new round of public integrity policies, because that money that we put in procurement, contracts are how we provide home delivered meals to seniors and after school programs for our kids and construction of our new schools and renovation of our parks and services for the homeless. And we have to know when that happens that there's competitive bidding, that there's integrity in the contracting, that somebody's cousin or brother isn't getting juiced for a contract, that there's real scrutiny. I'm proud of the work we've done in the Comptroller's Office to make it happen, but it is time for a new round of public integrity policies in New York City so that we can truly ensure the safer, more affordable, more livable, more better run and trusted city government that everyone deserves. Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator Hoylman. This great town hall.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. City Controller. You've seen him everywhere throughout the borough, and I'm very pleased to introduce our Manhattan Borough President, Mark Levine.
Thank you, Brad Hoylman-Sigal. Good afternoon, everybody. Brad, I am so grateful for your leadership. You'll be hard-pressed to find a smarter, more effective lawmaker in the state of New York. Give it up for Brad Hoylman-Sigal. Great friend and great partner for me. Sorry for being late, folks. I was at the 55th Annual African American Day Parade in Harlem. Bigger and better than ever. And now, happy to be sharing a few thoughts with all of you. I want to hit 3 quick points. First, I am deeply concerned about the state of housing affordability in this borough and city. Every single month, I get a report on average rents. I got it for this month on Friday. Do you know that average rents in this borough for market rate apartments are now $5,119 per month? This is unsustainable. We will lose the next generation of Manhattanites if we do not address this crisis. This is a multi-front fight. But I want to tell you about one exciting opportunity that we have, emerging from another challenge. We have a lot of vacant office buildings in this borough. We actually have 90 million square feet of vacant office space in this borough. And some of that could and should be converted to housing, to affordable housing, to address this challenge. It will not be easy. Those buildings are big. They have floor plates the size of a football field, and to get a bedroom window in every apartment is no small challenge. It can be done, but we have some changes we have to make that possible. The law right now in New York forbids conversion of vacant office buildings in Midtown if they were built after 1961. Many of the vacant buildings are from the 70s and 80s, and they're going to sit vacant unless we fix that. We have a chance now. There's a major zoning change coming up before the City Council now. It's known as City of Yes. It's got a lot of components, but I want to tell you that one key component is to extend the cutoff date for conversion of vacant office buildings to 1990. We can do this, and when we do this, we will unlock the creation of tens of thousands of new apartments for Midtown. We can do that. And I'm very pleased that the leadership in Albany, from our housing chair, Linda Rosenthal, and I know that Tony Simone and Brad Hoylman-Sigal were part of this, in establishing a program to ensure there will be affordability in these conversions, so that we won't just get luxury apartments, but thanks to the tax program they enacted, we're going to get some affordable apartments in Midtown. What do you say to that? Thank you, Linda, for being on that. We have an epidemic of fake license plates in this city, and fraudulent plates, and obscured, and even missing plates. Have you seen this out there on the streets? Have you seen these James Bond-like devices where a little screen comes down when they go through the toll? This is real. This is out there. We are losing tens of millions of dollars a year, probably $200 million a year, in tolls that go unpaid, in fines for red light cameras and speed cameras that go unpaid. We're getting more reckless driving out there because of drivers who know they will not be held accountable for running red lights and speeding in school zones. We have got to crack down on this illegal behavior, and we can do it. And my office put out an agenda that requires stiffer fines, including points on your license for fake plates, that will require boots and towing of cars parked on the street with fake plates, and that will crack down on what is right now very easily available sale of these devices online. You can go to Facebook Marketplace, you can go to Craigslist, you can go to TikTok. You can easily buy these devices from right here in New York City. It's been against the law to sell them since 2022 in New York City, and now since September 1st statewide, but they're easily available, so we're pushing the platforms to rein that in, to make our streets safer. And finally, I'm a little over time, but we got a revolution coming in composting in Manhattan. Do you know about this? You do know about this. Until now, if you wanted to get rid of your organic waste and you didn't want it to go to landfill, you've only had two choices. You could take it to a wonderful community compost site. They're great. Or you could put it, was there one applause in the back for community composting? They're great. We love them. And you can drop it in the orange bins that you've seen all over the West Side. You're going to have a better option, or at least one more, convenient for you, right in your apartment. Starting October 6th, every building in New York City will be required to collect composting, just like they separate out paper waste and cans and bottles. This is going to be a game change for composting in New York. It's going to take a lot of education to get this right. Education of building owners and supers, and also of residents. So please help spread the word about this new program starting October 6th in every building in Manhattan. Let's make this a huge success and a big win for composting in New York. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Borough President. All of your efforts on housing and micromobility and sidewalk sheds, among other things. Our next presenter will be our local state assembly member. Let's give it up for Linda B. Rosenthal.
Hi everyone. Isn't it good to have a woman on the stage? our highest office in the land. Thank you, Brad. Thanks for having us. Thanks for inviting all of us. I haven't seen some of my colleagues because we always see each other every day in Albany, but since we're not in Albany, but it's good to get together, including with my soon-to-be newest colleague, Michael Lasher, who will assume the seat in the 69th Assembly District, just above this. And also Tony Simone, he's also a newish colleague, 2 years, it's great to have him too. And you know, the Assembly has wonderful, wonderful electeds, as does the Senate, Brad can tell you. And of course, our wonderful DA, we're working closely on with the Ghost Gun Initiative and our borough president. So even though you're men, it's good to have you here. Anyway, so I'm very proud to be the chair of the Assembly Housing Committee. Housing is the #1 issue that people come to my office for, whether it's evictions, whether it's people not getting the services that they're entitled to, and increasingly market rate tenants whose apartments are supposed to be governed by good cause eviction, whose landlords are not giving them leases under good cause eviction. Now, this is a brand new law that we ushered through in the budget. It basically gives rights to people who formerly had no rights, not even the right to lease renewal, if you're not a rent-regulated tenant. Now, Ellen Davidson of Legal Aid, who's a wonderful attorney and crafter of legislation in Albany, will be explaining all of that. But if you have any issues with good cause, landlords are trying to challenge that law by avoiding it, just ignoring it. And people here, people across the city, are entitled to new rights under good cause. You just have to learn what makes you a good cause tenant. And Ellen will be explaining that. We also passed a law modernizing HPD's finance laws to spur the development of more green, affordable housing in New York City. Legislation increasing penalties on landlords who refuse to register their rent-regulated apartments with the state. So we know we've lost tens of thousands of apartments because landlords simply did not register their rent-regulated apartments with the state. The HCR has said their hands are tied. All they can do is send a letter saying you're supposed to register. But after not registering for 4 years, 5 years, surprise, the apartment is now offered as market rate because it's not regulated. So we raised the fine on $500 each month that it's not regulated, and guess what? So many more people have registered their apartments. That's just the way it's supposed to go. I guess the price of doing business is below $500 a month per apartment registration. I'm working with Brad, Hoylman-Sigal, as he mentioned, on insurance for people who deliver. They don't have to have insurance, and the app should take out insurance because otherwise, if you're hit, you get nothing. And you're responsible for paying all your bills, which isn't the way it's supposed to be. I also have legislation holding delivery apps accountable for the chaos they're causing in our streets. So everybody wants their food right away, right? But you'd be willing to wait a little bit if the delivery person did not, drive the wrong way, not have their lights on the sidewalk. You all know the problem. The thing is, the delivery apps suspend delivery people if they don't get there fast enough. They just refuse to let them stay on their app. That endangers the whole city, and we can wait 5 minutes for them to obey the law. It's not their fault, it's the apps, greedy apps, more money for them, and people get hit on the street. We have to change that. We should not incentivize reckless behavior by dangling money or threatening someone's livelihood. This is very important to me and to so many people, our health data privacy. So not only is it important for women who come to New York to have reproductive health care that they're banned from having in other states. What happens is apps, anything you load your information, your personal health information on, is not covered by HIPAA which means that anyone can get your information, and the apps sell your information. They send you ads for things they think you'd like. As a matter of fact, there was a story where a young girl had gotten, she was, without her parents' knowledge, getting some reproductive health care, but the apps knew that she'd missed her period, so they sent some information that her mother got a hold of. And they didn't know that she was struggling with this, but now they knew. It's no one's business but your own, what you do with your own body. Certainly not state governments should not know what you're here in New York for. If you took a flight, if you missed your period, who knows? None of their business, but you know, there are no rules around this. So I'm working with the AG on this, and we hope to get this done next session. There's plenty more we have to do, as Mark said, about vacant buildings, vacant office buildings. So there are a lot of them, and even though some buildings are starting to become more full than they were, the idea to turn them into residences is a good one. However, not just for the super wealthy. We need to have residences for people of all incomes. Middle income people can't live here anymore, we know that. Lower income people live in NYC often, which needs $70 billion to fix their housing stock. But if we're going to create new housing, it has to be for everyone. So there is a tax benefit for those developers who turn vacant buildings into residences, but they need to use those tax benefits to create housing for regular people and not create just rows and rows and avenues of homes for the very wealthy, who we know have no trouble finding a place to buy and live in for maybe 2 days a month, 1 day a month, 1 week a year. Anyway, you know how it goes. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be in this museum again. We love it here. Thank you for hosting all of us, and thanks for listening. You know where to find me.
Thank you, Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal. Her colleague is here, and I'm very proud to represent my friend, Assembly Member Tony Simone.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Assemblymember Tony Simone. I represent just south of here, although I love Zay bars, and everyone knows I love gay bars as well. I just want to commend Brad. Thank you for inviting us again to the second town hall. I look forward to these. Someone joked once that Brad was an egghead. He just comes up with legislation constantly walking down the block. I strive to be like Brad Hoylman-Sigal when it comes to coming up with legislation that will actually improve our lives. And I'm not going to go through a whole litany of a lot of the bills that we're working on together. I want to be a little bit more global, and I'll mention 1 or 2 bills I've introduced and some bills that we've passed at last session. But as we know, we're at a pivot point, an inflection point in our democracy, but also, you know, some of our opponents, I don't call them opponents, but some of the folks on the other side of the aisle will tell you that New York State, New York City are a disaster. They'll tell you, but you know, in my eyes, New York City's back. New York State is back. But let's not be naive. We have a lot of challenges that were mentioned before by my great, smart, hardworking colleagues. And one particular thing I've been talking about, public policy issues, since I ran, one of the reasons I ran, is we need a more livable, affordable city. And it's ridiculous. The West Side should not just be the playground for the very wealthy. We should not just have apartments and luxury apartments that sit empty and oligarchs park their money. We need middle-class housing. We need housing for the firefighter and the teacher. We need housing for every New Yorker, and they should be able to work and live in the same district. They should be able to live in the west side of Manhattan, because not to be biased against some of my colleagues east side, the west side is the best side. We want every New Yorker to live here. But some of the bills I've been working on, 2 new bills that I recently introduced. One is the PAWS Act. I have a rescue dog with my husband, Jason, and right now, if you hit one of our family members, the person responsible can just get like a fine of like a U-turn ticket, very low, like $50. The PAWS Act I'm introducing next section will raise the fine and have a new definition for our companion animals with Senator May from upstate to ensure folks take it seriously if they're driving violently, not just against humans, but our pets and cats. And I've seen folks in New York walk their cat, so even your cat. And another bill I'm going to introduce the next session is the IUD insertion anesthesia bill. It will require contraceptive and menstrual health procedures that insurance cover it, because it's often a painful experience right now that many women do not want to go through, and they're not readily offered it. Convincing insurance companies to do this will hopefully make the procedure easier, and more women will ensure that the insurance companies are paying for it. Some bills that we passed in the last session that I'm very proud of with State Senator Hoylman-Sigal was not only taking away co-pays for PrEP in the fight against HIV/AIDS, because it's still an epidemic before many gay men I represent in the district. Another bill I'm proud of is the bill that gives money and allows for Pier 76 to create an open green space on Pier 76, along with getting the heliport out of the park. It does not belong in a park. Anyway, I just want to end by saying we still have a public safety challenge, which we've worked closely with Brad, Linda, and everyone else, and the borough president, and our great district attorney. He mentioned it, the neighborhood navigators. Right now, the corridor between Penn Station and Penn Station and the Port Authority is very challenging. It's sad every time I walk to my office, and it's telling to see the addiction problem, to see folks living on the street. And while there are many ways to solve the problem, I'm a true believer you can't arrest ourselves out of this problem. We need to be able to help these folks. We need to be able to connect them to housing, real supportive housing. Brad mentioned it. There's a facility in Bayview, a facility in West Chelsea that the neighborhood has embraced, that they're taking bids now, that will house over 120 individuals and families. The only way we're ever going to solve this problem is to get these folks into housing, into treatment. We increased the money for the mental health crisis in the last budget. We have to look now where that money is actually going. But I'm an eternal optimist. I know in the next few years, hopefully it won't take a decade, not only will we create housing for every New Yorker, we will tackle the mental health crisis and the public safety issues we have now and make New York even greater than it is right now.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Very proud of how you have hit the ground running up in Albany. And speaking of hitting the ground, you see her everywhere. I'm honored she's here with us today. Councilmember Gail Brewer.
Thank you very much, Brad, Hoylman-Sigal. I just walked 30 blocks in the African American Day Parade, so I'm exhausted. A few things. First of all, I know for me also the issue of the e-bikes is a challenge, and we have tried everything from e-battery problems, trying to get them eliminated from the stores, to all kinds of enforcement. So there is a bill that I'm sponsoring that will pass with another package of bills in the City Council. I don't know the date, but it's going to be soon, and we're trying to get the apps, as everybody is, to do more, to do the training, to make sure that the folks are trained properly and that they don't break the law. Rules of the road. It's really hard. But I do want to thank Brad Hoylman and his colleagues, because we have a resolution that says, his bill that says that e-bike should be registered. It has to be done at the state level. It can't be done at the city level. And they should have a license and they should be registered. So I just want to thank him for carrying that bill and for all the work that the assembly member did. She said she was the only woman, so she told me to say there are two of us. So I'm also very focused on the schools, something we did recently, which I think will help the students and the teachers, which is washer dryers in the schools are needed. There are so many young people in care, meaning shelter, migrants and New Yorkers. They come to school with dirty clothes and they get bullied. So we were able to get a set of 14, so 14 different schools getting washer dryers. Now we just have to get them hooked up, which is probably as challenging as getting the donation. But we're working on it. I just say that because I know it's not something that comes to your mind in terms of academics, but these kids will not go to school and they're absent unless they have clean clothes, and the teachers have been taking home the clothes to be cleaned. I do want to talk about the ABC site, another land use issue. That's where ABC is on 67th Street. They left, they're going downtown. It was bought by Gary Barnett and Extel. Working with Community Board 7 and Landmark West and City Planning Commission and the owner, this is a tough one. Very quickly, we're trying to make sure that it is not too tall and affordable at the same time. But it's a rough one because there's no obvious ULURP, so just keep tuned for that issue. I also want to mention that I'm against the 5G towers. I don't know how other people feel. I feel very strongly about it. We don't need them. They're not appropriate for our neighborhood, but that's another fight like none other. I do want to say that on the ballot questions, number one is number one, and it will be a yes in terms of the state, but there are 2 through 6. You may not know the city council. I must admit I'm against them because of the process. You're going to go and you're going to say, uh-oh, what are all these ballot questions? And some of them may make sense to you, but they're basically the mayor, with all due respect, is pulling the rug out from the city council and saying, I want to be in charge of the city council. So vote no 2 through 6 in my opinion. I just got the hook in the back. You'll see on the table about 15 different events that we have that are coming up. Thank you very much to Brad Hoylman-Sigal and his amazing staff. Thank you.
And then last but certainly not least is the newest representative for the Upper West Side as of November. He's worked on in the executive chamber for the last couple of years. He actually helped us get Sammy's Law passed. He helped us get hate crimes protections expanded. I'm very proud to introduce my friend, Assembly Democratic nominee, Micah Lasher.
Thank you so much, Senator Hoylman-Sigal, and thank you all for taking the time out of this beautiful Sunday to be here. It is incredibly humbling to listen to each of our elected representatives and the extraordinary body of work they are doing, and I would like to give them all a big hand. And I would just say, thinking about the topics on the agenda for today, I think each of them, in a way, reflects the moment we're living in which, on a day like today, you think, boy, we are living in the best neighborhood, in the best city in the world, and yet we still have real challenges. We passed, thanks to the leadership of the legislators here, important legislation, and to District Attorney Bragg, important legislation on hate crimes, and yet we are facing unprecedented rates of hate crimes, hate harassment, and particularly anti-Semitism, and that is a challenge we have to continue to confront. Thanks to the leadership of Assemblymember Rosenthal and Senator Hoylman-Sigal, we have made our streets safer, and we've gotten people out of their cars, and we have made it more environmentally friendly, and at the same time we have a scourge of e-bikes going the wrong way down bike lanes, riding on sidewalks, and really making everybody feel less safe. And that is something we need to work on, and I would be proud to be a supporter of Assemblymember Simone and Senator Hoylman-Sigal's legislation to create a state regime for licensing of e-bikes. And last but certainly not least, Assemblymember Rosenthal has been an incredible leader on housing in the state of New York, and we have made enormous progress with sweeping protections for tenants in 2019 and for rent-regulated tenants, and with the good cause eviction legislation passed this last year. But there is still so much more to do to make housing more affordable in this state and to protect tenants. And Borough President Levine has been a leader on addressing the enormous shortage of housing. We just haven't created housing almost at all in this state and city, and that is something we desperately need to work on. And what more can I say about Councilmember Gail Brewer other than she does it all the time, and she's a model to us all. So I'm really looking forward to serving with all of you on the stage, and to listening and learning and trying to do everything I can to help all of you in the audience. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Assembly Democratic nominee Micah Blasher. Just want to remind you that we have been handing out cards. We're going to have a question and answer period with written questions, and we'll actually also be passing around mics too. But if you could fill out your cards and let our team know that you have them, they will collect them. You see our amazing colleagues there picking them up. And let's also give a round of applause to our sign language interpreters, Andrea and Johnny. Thank you very much. And now our first presentation is going to be about what was mentioned earlier from Micah and Linda, good cause eviction. So I'm very pleased to present to you Ellen Davidson, who is the staff attorney for the Legal Aid Society. She's going to present to us Good Cause Eviction 101, how our new law protects market rate tenants, and frankly, how we can make the law even stronger in the next session.
Can everyone hear me? All right. Let me start by saying I have 10 minutes to talk, and I can talk about housing for 3 hours. So this is going to be an abbreviated talk. There's a one-pager when you come in all about good cause eviction law that has more information. So understand this should pique your interest. And please look at the one-pager because there's more complete information in it. So what is good cause eviction? Let's start with, some basic things you should understand. What is it? Well, a lot of you in this audience already have it. If you are rent-regulated, public housing, project-based Section 8, Mitchell-Lama, tax credit buildings, live in affordable housing. At the end of your lease term, your landlord gives you a new lease. And what increases you have depend on the law that governs your type of housing. But for many tenants, almost half of the tenants who live in New York City, before April, at the end of their lease terms, the landlord could say, I'm not renewing your lease. The landlord could double their rents, and it was completely legal. And the good cause eviction law was meant to address it. However, it doesn't cover everyone, which is one of the things that I think our senator was alluding to that maybe we need to fix. But let's talk about who is covered. The law assumes you're covered and then gives a very long list of exemptions. If you live in an apartment that's owned by a small landlord, and I will define that in a second. If you live in an owner-occupied building and there are 10 or less units in your building, you are not covered. There's a high rent exemption, so it's if you live in an apartment where the rent is 245% of fair market rents. And just for an example, for a one bedroom, that's $6,000, you are not covered. If you are a renter or an owner who live in a co-op or condo building, you aren't covered. And if you are in a building that has a certificate of occupancy that was issued after January 1st, 2009, you are not covered. Small landlord does not mean small building. It is about how many buildings your landlord owns, and if you count up all those buildings, your landlord is covered if he owns 11 or more units. So if you're in a 6-unit building and your landlord owns 3 6-unit buildings, you are covered by the law. I understand that most housing in New York State is not owned by individuals, which makes this very hard to figure out. The law asks about the natural person who's behind the LLC, and there are disclosure requirements that LLCs have to give to tenants so they know whether or not they're covered. So what do you get if you're covered? Oh, and let me just say, in the one-pager that is in the front, there is a link to an excellent site by Just Fix called Who Owns What, that I encourage everyone to look at. Reasonable, what do you get if you're covered by the law? You get some limitations on rent increases. The law defines what they call a reasonable rent increase based on what the change in inflation is year by year, plus 5%, but no more than 5%. And HCR will put on its website, and has done for this year, what that increase will be for this year, which is 8.82%. But what you should know is that there's no agency that oversees this law. Unfortunately, all of you are responsible for knowing what the law is and reminding your landlords at every moment that they are not following it. So if you are covered by this law and your landlord is giving you a rent increase of 20%, you need to contact your landlord and say, I'm covered by this new law, give me a lease that complies with it. And landlords have been doing that once they're called out on it, unfortunately. The other way that this increase comes into effect is as a defense in a non-payment case, but I'm sure all of you would rather not be defending in a non-payment case because being in housing court sucks. Landlords can get even a higher increase than this already high increase, but they have to base it on increased costs and not on increased market, which I'm sure this community has seen again and again, that as market prices go up, landlords try to claim that they charge more money. This purpose of this law is to say if your costs go up, maybe you can get more, but not just because the market is crazy. So what are the other good causes other than non-payment of rent? It's pretty obvious: breach of lease, nuisance, illegal use, unreasonable refusal of access. If a tenant refuses to sign a lease renewal that has reasonable terms in it, that might be a cause for eviction. Owner use, if the landlord's trying to recapture the unit for them or their family member. However, if the tenant is disabled or is 65 or older, the landlord can't use that provision for this. Demolition of housing accommodation, which means demolition of building not substantially repaired of the apartment, and intention to withdraw from the housing market. There are lots of notice requirements that the landlords have to give tenants, and if they don't give those notices, they can't sue you in housing court. And if they try to get you to sign a lease that says I'm not covered by good cause, they can't do that. You can't give up your rights by signing a piece of paper. And so that's like my basic, as short as I can do it, good cause eviction law. Please look at the materials that are on the front desk. But just to say that's not, it's not the end of the story. We have so many more things we need to fight for. We need to make some changes to this law, technical changes. We need to eventually cover more people. We've been fighting for the last couple of years for a couple of pieces of legislation that we need to get done. Assemblymember Rosenthal is the prime sponsor of the Housing Access Voucher Program. We need to get rental subsidy into people's hands. The rent is too damn high. We can delay or try to lower increases as much as possible, but the truth of the matter is no one can afford their rent in this state. And so we've been trying to push for a state Section 8 program that would mimic the federal Section 8 program and make things more affordable for people. We've also been fighting for the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which is a piece of legislation that would give tenants the opportunity to try to match prices when their buildings are up for sale. Some of this is about expanding home ownership, but some of it is about working with mission-driven non-for-profits, assigning them rights, and getting housing out of the hands of slumlords and into the hands of people who actually care about our communities. Those two bills we've been fighting for a couple of years. We need help from all of you. The Housing Access Voucher, I should say, is an incredibly popular program. There's one person in the state who hates it. and her name is Governor Hochul. So if any of you know her, please tell her we need this. But we're also planning on fighting this year to reform the Rent Guidelines Board, which desperately needs it. We have a social housing development authority bill. We want to create a new housing authority in the state that will actually build mixed income affordable housing, something like the Mitchell-Lamas of the past. We understand that this is going to cost money, but there's nothing more important than being able to afford your housing and be stable in your housing. And honestly, what else are we spending money on? We should be spending money to make sure that we all can live in our communities and contribute to our communities. I expect it's going to be the fight of my life to see a social housing development authority, and new Mitchell-Lamas, and new public housing, and new social housing. But I think it's a fight that it's worth having, and I'm hoping you will all join me in that. And then lastly, we are looking at some bills to, expand rent regulation. Right now, there are some limitations on what buildings could be rent regulated. They have to be built and occupied before 1974. That's a really long time ago. That law was written in 1974, and no one has reconsidered whether those terms make sense anymore. And we want to have that conversation, because as proud as I am that we finally got good cause done, rent regulation is better. And everyone should have the opportunity to be rent regulated. And so that's what I'm fighting for. And I hope you all join me with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellen, and thank you to Legal Aid for all the work they do on behalf of tenants. Briefly, we're going to hear from Sasha Ahuja from the Committee on New Yorkers for Civil Rights, Equal Rights, New Yorkers for Equal Rights. She's helping lead the initiative to pass Proposal 1, which will be before you on November 5th. Thank you, Sasha.
Good afternoon, West Side. How are we? I said, good afternoon, West Side. How are we? Amazing. I came all the way from Brooklyn to be here, so you gotta match the energy. I will be efficient with my time. Thank you so much, Senator Hoylman-Sigal. Thank you so much to everyone for being here. My name is Sasha Ahuja, and I'm here to tell you about an important measure on the ballot. Raise your hand if you plan to vote this November. Look around the room, my friends. A very engaged group of folks we have. Now, I'm going to ask you, if you plan to vote, keep your hand up. Raise your hand if you've heard about an important measure on the ballot. Proposal 1. Keep that hand up if you've heard about Prop 1. Okay, so we have some education to do. My friends, this November, in addition to voting for candidates up and down the ballot, you will have the opportunity to flip your ballot and vote yes on Proposal 1. Now, Councilmember Gail Brewer already previewed it. She said how she's voting. Thank you, Gail Brewer. Prop 1 is such an important measure on the ballot. I want to take us back just about 2 years ago, when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. Many of us, including many folks here in this room, we were shocked. We thought our rights were protected, and we realized on that day in June that our rights are not as secure as we thought they were. So states all across the country, including right here in New York, moved quickly to put measures on the ballot to protect our rights and our reproductive freedoms, including abortion. We did that very thing here in New York. Thanks to the leadership of our state legislature, they convened in a special session and they said, even in a state like New York, we need to make sure that all of our rights are protected. Prop 1 does two things. It protects the right to abortion here in New York. Prop 1 also closes loopholes in our state constitution so that no New Yorker can be discriminated against by the government. No matter if you're LGBT, if you live with a disability, if you're an older adult, if you need access to contraception, if you need access to IVF, Prop 1 protects all of us. Now here in New York, we don't often get educated about measures on the ballot. You may show up to vote and say, hey, what are these things? What are these issues? I am here to tell you it is so important to vote yes on Prop 1. Now, right outside, on your seats, you got one of these handy pamphlets. There are some outside. Please take them. We will go to your community board. We will go to your town hall, to your book club, and talk to New Yorkers about how essential it is to vote yes on Prop 1. Final reminder, in 2021, we had voting rights measures on the ballot. And you may remember that we lost that fight because New Yorkers said, of course, sure, we'll support voting rights, but they didn't really take the fight seriously. The anti-abortion extremists in our state are starting to organize. They know that these measures are powerful. They know that they energize our folks. And it is so important, including right here in New York City, that every voter, in addition to candidates who they support, up and down the ballot, that they flip their ballot and vote yes. Those 2021 measures failed for many reasons, but also 30% of voters in the city left the question blank. So right here in New York City, we have a responsibility. We need to make sure that every voter flips their ballot. We're so excited to go win. It is an energizing, exciting, historic election, and we can't do it without all of you. Again, my name is Tasha Ahuja with the campaign to pass Prop 1. Please flip your ballot and vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. And one of the reasons why you want to turn your ballot over and vote yes on Prop 1 is sitting right on the stage, my 7-year-old Lucy. So, yes, I will be chastised at home for that announcement. Our next speaker, and then we're going to get to the Q&A portion shortly. We're going to hear from a representative of the Midtown Community Justice Center. I'm very pleased to introduce Danielle Minus, the project director, who helped Councilmember Brewer and Assemblymember Rosenthal and I and our other colleagues in organizing a symposium on e-bike and micro-mobility safety in the spring. Thank you so much. Nice to see you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Senator, for having me here. I really appreciate it. I'm Danielle Mendez. I'm the project director at the Midtown Community Justice Center. Hopefully everyone can hear me. So the Midtown Community Justice Center, and you can see the smiling faces of our team right here, has been around for 30 years. And I'm going to share just a very brief overview of our history, what we do today, and then spend the bulk of my time talking about the symposium that we co-sponsored with the Senator, with Councilmember Brewer's office in response to unsafe e-bike and moped riding in the city. The Justice Center was established in 1993 as a response to low-level crime in the Times Square area. And the idea was that folks who were getting arrested on things like low-level drug charges, jumping the turnstile, prostitution, were cycling in and out of jail and nothing was changing. And it was a public-private partnership between the court system, the city, and a new nonprofit called the Center for Court Innovation, now called the Center for Justice Innovation, to say maybe that's not the most productive thing that we can be doing for these folks. Maybe if we try to meet their needs when they come into the court system, we won't see them back here often. So that was the experiment, and I'll fast forward through about 27 years of history up to the pandemic when the court was unfortunately closed down, but it gave the team an opportunity to rethink what we were doing and to, that slide is very hard to read on the screen, and to focus outside of the courtroom and into the community. So the court was closed down, and then we started thinking about upstream solutions to these very same quality of life issues in Midtown, and we started a street outreach program in Times Square called Community First, and really leaned into diversion programming to support folks with voluntary services before they ever had to come into court. And today, we're very happy, though, to report that the court is reopening, much thanks to Senator Hoylman-Sigal, who's been a leader in that fight and making that happen. But we haven't lost our touch point with the community and all of that, and we changed our name to the Midtown Community Justice Center from court in order to reflect that. And we're very excited to announce, this is the only part of the slide that you can see, that with Senator Hoylman's support, we're reopening for what we're calling community court in 10 days. So that's going to be, all the low-level cases and summonses from our catchment area, which is 14th Street to 86th Street on the west side and to 59th Street on the east side. So that's a pretty big chunk of Midtown Manhattan. We have a really wonderful team, an invigorated judge, and we're really excited for what we're going to be able to do. And Councilwoman Brewer has been a huge supporter in that as well. We also in our courtroom run the misdemeanor mental health court for Manhattan, which I could do a whole other presentation about and would be happy to speak with folks about. And the emerging adult court, which is 18 to 25-year-olds who are arrested on low-level charges. But I'm here to talk about our symposium. So I'm judging from the reaction that I've heard from the crowd today when this issue has come up repeatedly. Folks are quite concerned about micro-mobility vehicles, e-bikes and mopeds driving on our streets in a way that is unsafe, both to pedestrians and cyclists and to the riders themselves. In fact, it is now, I think, the most unsafe profession that has surpassed the construction industry in that regard. And since I started my job at the end of 2022 and started going to a lot of these meetings, hearing from folks like you all, this was the thing that was coming up over and over again. People were truly terrified of these vehicles on our streets, as I can understand as a person who walks around with small children. But I was conflicted. I was getting approached about it as a person representing the courts and law enforcement. And because this is an issue that is in large part related to newly arrived migrants and consumer demand and big app companies taking an approach that was law enforcement heavy, didn't sit right with me. So I went to our judge and I explained this to him and asked him for his thoughts. And he said, you know, this is where we can really use our power as a convener to bring folks together, real experts on every layer of this issue, and try to see if we can move the needle in that way. And so we went to Senator Hoylman-Sigal, we went to Councilmember Brewer, and we asked for their support. They joined right on board in creating a symposium to do just that, which we called Reimagining Micromobility Safety in NYC, a symposium. Oh my goodness, I did not realize how hard it would be to read. I'm happy to send anybody these slides if people are frustrated that they're unable to read what's written here. We held it March 1st of this year at the beautiful New World Stages Theater, and it was arranged as a hackathon. So we invited experts from our city agencies like the NYPD, FDNY, the DMV, DOT, Consumer Protection, the advocacy groups like Transportation Alternatives, and New Yorker Pedestrians for Bike Safety, and we even had somebody there who himself is a delivery driver, and many more. And we broke up into predetermined small groups to unpack these issues and talk about them in more depth. And there you are. The issues that we worked through were around street infrastructure, battery fires, unsafe riding, and worker exploitation, which are all tied to this same issue. So I want to talk about the key takeaways and recommendations that came out of the symposium. As you heard, Senator Hoylman-Sigal and Assemblymember Boris had their bill signed into law in July, which is extremely exciting, that requires moped registration at the point of sale. There are lots of reasons why this is important. We need to know who's driving on our streets to be able to hold folks accountable for bad driving. But I also just want to share from our perspective as in the courts, that we have seen so many people get arrested and come in and tell us that what happened was They were newly arrived to the country. They spent every last dollar they had to purchase a moped so that they could earn money doing delivery driving. They didn't understand that that moped was not legally registered. They were then arrested. The moped was seized by the NYPD, and then they were in court. They were going to leave court without a means of providing for themselves. There was really nothing much we could do for them. And this is predatory, right? So that's another issue and another reason why I'm very excited to hear that bill was signed. The senator is also working on the BOT Act, which would ensure that electronic monitoring cannot be used at the detriment of worker safety. So the idea being that the app companies are requiring for deliveries to be happening at a speed that is just completely unreasonable, right? So when delivery workers fail to pick up an order on time or deliver an order on time, they can be deactivated, which is essentially just to be fired from their job. And so that incentivizes people to drive badly, and for us to see the unsafe conditions on our street that we see. And so it's really important that the app companies are held accountable in this way. This bill also ensures that the app companies have to have actual people reviewing termination. So it can't just be an automated process by which a worker is terminated and doesn't know why. And this was something that we heard about a lot at the symposium. Folks' wages were withheld after they've been terminated without any cause and couldn't get the wages that they had earned. I'm gonna go quickly because I'm being told that I have 1 minute left. You already heard about liability insurance. In the street infrastructure group, just a few quick things that were discussed: building more double-wide bike lanes, adjusting intersections to expand daylighting, which is to ensure that parking is at least 20 to 25 feet away from the intersection to increase visibility, installing a network of protected bike parking so that riders don't have to ride on the sidewalk to come back around. And then the issue of battery safety, which I think most people here are familiar with the fact that lithium-ion batteries that are used in e-bikes cause tragic fires. And that group talked about ways of regulating and ensuring that that any batteries and bikes that are sold are safe, and also that there are safe ways of charging those. Okay, I went a little over maybe, but more or less. Okay. So here's my contact information, and please feel free to reach out to me if you would like to know more. And I'm sorry you couldn't see my slides.
Thank you very much, Danielle, and thank you to you and your colleagues, particularly Judge Wang, who's the amazing judge at Midtown Community Justice Center, and so many of the issues they work on, including addiction, homelessness, neighborhood quality of life, really have an impact, not just in Midtown, but across the west side of Manhattan. Our next presentation, and then we're going to go to the Q&A portion, is from the American Jewish Committee. I spoke to the American Jewish Committee a few months ago, and they wanted to partner on a town hall, and I said, well, we're having a town hall, and we'd love for you to come, because we all remember here on the West Side incidents of anti-Semitism in recent months, including the incidents at Effie's, that staple of our Upper West Side neighborhood that was defaced with anti-Semitic hate. So Marisa Barak, who's the Assistant Director of the American Jewish Committee, is going to talk about a survey that they conducted around this very important topic here in New York City and across the state. So without further ado, welcome Marisa.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you everyone for being here. To briefly start, for those of you who don't know about AJC, we are the global Jewish advocacy organization. We are located in 25 regional offices across the United States, and we have 15 international posts. Just for some background, there are about 15.2 million Jews in the entire world. To put that into perspective, that is 0.2% of the entire world's 8 billion population. There are about 7 million Jews in Israel, which is a country smaller than New Jersey. And in the United States, Jews make up about 2% of the entire US population. In New York, about 1/3 of Jewish Americans live in the state. Most of us are concentrated in and around New York City. So about 1 in 10 New Yorkers is Jewish, which could make it seem like there are a lot of us, not just in the US, but around the world, but that's actually not the case. Annually, the American Jewish Committee releases a survey on the state of anti-Semitism in America. This is data from the 2023 survey. We actually pulled it from the field right after the October 7th terrorist attacks in Israel, and surveyed additional people, both the general US population and American Jews. You can see here that 93% of American Jews think anti-Semitism is a problem in the United States today. As you can imagine, that number went up from 2022, which was at 89%. And I can only imagine that when we release the 2024 report in early 2025, we will see that number jump even higher than it already is. 63% of American Jews in 2023 say that the status of Jews in the US is less secure than a year ago. To put that into perspective, in 2022, that number was 41%. So it jumped in just a year from 41% to 63%. 62% of American Jews have seen or heard anti-Semitism online or on social media in the past year. I'm sure many of us are aware that anti-Semitism has been permeating online spaces, particularly social media, especially post-October 7th. And 78% of American Jews report feeling less safe in the US following the Hamas terrorist attacks. 1 in 5 American Jews feel unsafe when attending any of the Jewish institutions with which they are affiliated because of anti-Semitism. And of course, we're all aware of the anti-Semitism that's been permeating across education spaces, particularly on our college campuses, not just in New York City, but throughout the United States. 1 in 5 current or recent Jewish college students report feeling or being excluded from a group or event because they are Jewish. To put that into perspective, Jewish students are feeling very isolated, and colleges and universities need to do better and be held accountable to uphold their policies or adapt their policies for the challenges that they're facing today. So why now? Why is it so important to talk about anti-Semitism? We're seeing a deepening polarization, political polarization across the United States, a rise in conspiracy theories. We saw a rise in conspiracy theories against Jews at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. The Holocaust denialism is growing, and the Holocaust itself is retreating into distant history for many people. Of course, the mainstreaming of anti-Semitism and extremism, and growing weaponization of the intractable Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Here in New York City in particular, most, as we heard earlier from our elected officials, most hate and bias incidents target members of the Jewish community. In June, the NYPD reported that 45 anti-Semitic incidents occurred in that month, and 57% of all hate crimes in the city were anti-Jewish. And this cloud that you see, it's from the NYPD hate crimes dashboard, and the data is through June of this year. In 2024, 200 of 329 incidents were targeted against Jews, and these are confirmed incidents. So not all incidents that were reported, but these are all confirmed. And I can tell you, as someone who has been researching and giving these presentations for years now, this cloud with the word Jewish being the largest, that has been occurring for the past several years now. And of course, there's an image here. It's a little bit blurry, but in June, there was a protester who entered a New York City subway train and said, "Raise your hand if you're a Zionist," and threatened Jews who to say, "Now's your chance to get off of this train." So that's just a little bit of what Jews are dealing with in this city right now. So something that we need to talk about as well is the changing landscape of anti-Semitism. I encourage all of you, when you leave here today, at our literature table, to take one of these glossaries called Translate Hate. It has over 90 terms, including things like Holocaust denial and conspiracy theory, and Zionist, when that is used against Jews in a way that is perceived as anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitism is a symptom of a deeper societal problem. It's the proverbial canary in a coal mine. One thing you may have heard about is something called the Great Replacement Theory, and it's a conspiracy that claims Jews are behind efforts to essentially drive out the white race from the US. And it is an underlying motive of several anti-Semitic and racist incidents, including the Tree of Life Pittsburgh synagogue shooting in 2018, as well as the 2022 Buffalo shooting at Tops Supermarket. Civil rights strategist Eric Ward, he noted that while the Buffalo shooter targeted African Americans, the underlying motive was a perceived war against the Jewish community. So where do we go from here? 9 in 10 Americans, both Jews and non-Jewish adults in the United States, say that it's important for Jewish communities and other religious and ethnic communities to increase cooperation with each other. So what can you do to support your Jewish neighbors and the wider Jewish community? There are many different avenues that you can explore. I encourage you to do so. One is protecting Jewish institutions, and one way to do that is when you report anti-Semitic incidents, and we have literature about that as well, reporting anti-Semitism to federal agencies, law enforcement, and social media. Preventing online threats, holding social media platforms accountable. Encouraging media literacy, especially in an age of growing anti-Semitism and conspiracy theories and extremism. Education, strengthening education on Jews, anti-Semitism, and the Holocaust. And as community members, participating in bridge-building coalitions and initiatives. I want to emphasize that fighting anti-Semitism isn't just a Jewish issue. It's something that must be done by all members of society, both with grassroots efforts that include you as community members and local organizations, as well as grass-tops organizations and institutions like AJC, as well as our elected officials and policymakers at all levels of government. This collaborative effort is the best way to combat, condemn, and dismantle anti-Semitism. It's up to all of us to work together to do that. And finally, if you have any questions, feel free to jot down my information, my director Josh Kramer's information. He was supposed to be here today, but he welcomed a baby boy a couple of days ago. So you all got me today instead. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marisa, for that very informative presentation. We're now going to have our Q&A portion of the town hall, and feel free to make a brief statement if you would like, but not too long, because we have less than an hour to finish our town hall today. So I'm going to start with, so we're going to have mics floating throughout the audience, and we're also going to read some of the questions. You see my colleagues over there waving, flapping their arms. and we're going to have questions also that you've written. So we're going to go back and forth, and our presenters are also going to be available to answer questions. So the first question is there anything being planned to address warehousing of rent-stabilized units? Ellen Davidson is champing at the bit to answer that question.
Sure. So just for folks to know, the term warehousing usually refers to when you have a rent-stabilized apartment and the landlord's not renting out all the apartments. It's bad, to be in an apartment with a lot of empty units. Also, it's a resource that's not being used, and that sucks. So one of the motivations that people thought that was causing landlords to hold these apartments off the market was that there was this loophole that was left after the big rent laws were passed in 2019. That was if the landlord could combine a rent-stabilized unit with a unit next door, they could set a first rent of like $10,000, which you could understand why it would be worth it to do that. I'm happy to say that both the state legislature and DHCR closed that loophole in December. And so we think that which is great. So we think that some of the motivation for holding apartments empty will be addressed by that. There's also some city council bills. There's an end warehousing campaign that have worked with city council members to pass some bills that would allow, the bills haven't been passed, but that would allow people where there are conditions happening in your apartment because the apartment next door is empty, to allow them to have HPD get involved. But lastly, we can't just pass a law that says all landlords have to rent out apartments. I want to be real. And part of the reason I say that is that I spent the last couple of years defending the rent stabilization laws from landlords who are trying to take the case to the Supreme Court to end rent regulation. The Supreme Court last year had the opportunity to take 3 cases. They did not. There are 2 more outstanding. I think they will also not take those cases. But one of the concepts that the Supreme Court looks at is whether or not landlords are forced to rent out apartments. So we can't and so the fact that they are not helps keep our laws constitutional, which is bad. I'll acknowledge for those who are in buildings with warehouse apartments. But I think the Frankensteining, the city council legislation will be helpful. And as we learned from the new laws of fining people for not registering apartments, there were 200,000 apartments that disappeared from registration. And they passed a bill. I thought it was useless, between you and me. Sorry, I did. And then over 100,000 apartments got registered this summer because of that legislation. So sometimes, bills that do small things have a huge effect.
What is the motivation on a landlord's part not to rent an apartment right now? Are they waiting? Are they holding out for something that we don't?
Look, asking me to get into the head of a landlord is hard. Easy. I think some landlords are doing it because they're mad that they can't, deregulate units like they plan to. I think some landlords think that eventually the pendulum will swing back and they'll be able to get great wealth from those apartments. And some landlords are just really bad business people. And they just can't figure out how to make things work.
Thank you. I don't know if Councilmember Brewer has anything to add.
No, I do think that the city council, all we can do, because most of it is on the state level, is to try to do data, which is also part of what we're trying to do, like how many are actually warehoused, and in addition, if there is a situation next door to you, this is Carlina Rivera, council member, and my bill to try to do that. So we wish we could do more because it would pass perhaps, but we are preempted by the state, which we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Now we're going to take a question from the floor. Do we have someone with a mic and a question? Okay, Evan?
Right here. Question.
There's a question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I do have a question. How many conversions are occurring? Are rent-stabilized buildings continuing to be converted into condos? Great question.
Maybe a planted question, it was so good.
Maybe. So actually, no, they are not. And part of the reason they are not is part of the historic 2019 Housing Stability and Tenant Protection Act that passed, raised the amount of people who have to agree to the conversion from 15% to 51%. And so that has really slowed down the conversions.
Okay, we're going to go from a question on a card. This is for Danielle, I think. Why are bicycles allowed to go through red lights? Even in front of the police, nothing is done. Also, bikes go against traffic, wrong way. This problem is getting worse, and the police seem not to be doing anything.
I can't speak for the NYPD today. I come here representing a group of people who are looking at ways to solve this problem, but I'll say they should not be running red lights. Perhaps the NYPD is avoiding that situation because they feel like then down the road nothing is happening if they're arresting people and it's not worth their time. So I think that what I can really say about it is that it needs to be a multi-layered solution so that we're seeing less of the red light running to begin with. I'll also mention that when we reopen for community court on September 25th at Midtown Community Justice Center, we'll be getting all the summonses in Manhattan for reckless driving. So that we driver accountability program, and we'll be tailoring that to folks who are delivery drivers and micro mobility cases, and so I'm hopeful that that can also help move the needle.
Thank you, and I think colleagues have pointed out that the penalty for a hit and run by someone who's bicycling is different and lower than a hit and run of somebody who's driving, say, an automobile. Do you think those should be leveled, those types of fines or penalties? Unclear. Hard question.
Yeah,
There is legislation to make those penalties the same. I mean, based on the assumption that a hit and run is such an egregious and unconscionable act. Councilmember Brewer?
I just think what would really help would be the registration, your wonderful bill for e-bikes, because then, right now, when we hear about hit and run, we cannot find the bicyclist who hit. And that's something that is a constant. So we really, I appreciate so much, but we really need that registration.
So as Councilmember Brewer alluded to, we have a bill in Albany I carry with Assemblymember Simone to require e-bikes for commercial purposes to be registered and actually have a license plate so we can take care of enforcement. Let's take a question from the floor.
Thank you very much for this town hall. My name's Cullen Oliver Johnson. I've lived on 76. Can you hear me all right? I'm trying to be calm. Thank you for your time, everybody. 76 between Central Park and Columbus since 1972. I became an advocate about bicycle safety in our city when a gentleman from Jersey City came out of Scaletta Restaurant on 77th Street from a family celebration in November of 1997, and a chirping chicken bite hit him in his tracks as he stood there talking to his friends after the celebration, and he died an hour later in the hospital. And that was 1997. And ladies and gentlemen, and wonderful members of the council here, it's gotten worse and worse. I just have to address what you're talking about, red lights. New York City laws address that when you're riding a bike on this, you don't ride a bike on the sidewalk. It's against the law. You got to get off and walk your bike. Number two, just like a car, if it's a red light, if you're on a bike, you got to stop for the red light. You don't go through it like a vehicle. Can you imagine if all the cars went through red lights? The bikes go through it all the time. Number three, the bike lanes are a joke. You have a bike lane going downtown, but the bike lanes are going uptown and downtown. And if you're an elderly person or a guy with a little bit of a physical issue like myself, my neighbors, everybody in this room, you gotta look to the left and to the right and then to the left again to make sure you're not gonna get hit going the wrong way. The other issue is very important. Very important issue here. The blue city bikes are the worst offenders right now in our city. And I'll tell you why. I was walking down my block on 76th Street about 3 weeks ago. Thank you for the time. It's very important though. And a city bike, a guy riding down from Central Park West. I'm talking to my neighbor's security guy down at 54. I see him in the distance riding the bike. You got to get off the sidewalk. No, he keeps coming. You got to get off the sidewalk because it gets law. Get out of my way, he says on the city bike. I said, sir, this is our blocking. Leave me alone. And he rides on, but I steps aside because I'm going up to the Arthur Avenue and have some Italian food with my girlfriend from Sweden. And I don't want to get my life suffered on that street. But that's the issue. Last point about the city bike. Mr. Risher, let me just get my glasses on. Mr. David Risher, graduate of Princeton and Harvard, and an ex, businessman, now owns the Lyft car services, and he also, his company, owns the City Bike. City Bike should have a brochure like all the detectives from the New York precincts I've talked to of all the bike laws that I've just stated in black and white. So when you ride a city bike or any people that ride bikes in the city of New York, these are our laws, obey our laws, don't come into our city trying to kill us. That's it.
That's it.
Get in touch with Mr. Risher and ask him. Get in touch. Hey, get the dialogue.
Thank you very much. So that's important information. I think we're gonna be hearing that from more than just you, but that's our job here today. And here's a question on a card for the elected officials, particularly Gail Brewer and Brad Hoylman-Sigal. Air quality is a huge health problem in New York, and air pollution will kill 3,200 New Yorkers this year. Can you please commit to supporting the Citizens Air Complaint Program, which lets ordinary New Yorkers report illegal engine idling by trucks and buses? And 2, will you oppose the new bill, Intro 941, that would kill this crucial program? I don't know, Gail, if you want to go first?
I know about 941. Is Robin here somewhere? Robin asked a question, I bet. Yeah, see, I knew it was Robin. The issue, I know you're addressed to Robin. The issue is, it's a complicated bill, 941. I think there's hearing on September 18th. I urge anybody who's interested to come and testify. I know that Councilmember Gennaro, I spent an hour on the phone with them about this bill yesterday. So I think people should come and testify and make your views clear. But I am a big supporter of, like all of us, of clean air, and think that any way we can get there is a good thing.
Thank you, Councilmember. I will say that I wrote a letter in support of the Citizen Air Complaint Program just on Friday. I think it went out, and as well as opposing Intro 941 respectfully to the City Council. Obviously, I'm a state official, but we do weigh in on each other's bills. Thank you, Councilmember. Next question from the floor. Jake has one. If you could say your name and then ask your question or make your brief statement.
Michael Winston. I live on West 74th Street. This has to do with e-bikes, which is obviously a top issue here. And Priscilla's law in particular of Councilman Holden. My understanding, Mr. Sigal, is that your bill in the state requires registration of e-bikes, but it does not require, unless I misunderstood you before, and you said it also required display of license numbers on the bikes. Is that true?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so why aren't you backing Priscilla's law, which also requires that, or is that part of Priscilla's law? Because, you know, the fact of the matter is that when these bikes go the wrong way, they're on sidewalks, they hit someone, they can easily, if the bike is just registered, it can disappear, and the fact that it's registered has no impact on catching that individual. Whereas if it has a license plate or a license display, then cameras can catch it, police can catch it, pedestrians can catch it and call in the number, and at least the person arguably could be found. So it's very important, and it's also, I'll have to say, is that it's also, maybe the lack of, and it's also Councilwoman Brewer also, who I understand is not backing Priscilla's law. And, it also protects the migrant community to require that, because if they think that they're accountable, they're the ones that get into these accidents and are oftentimes injured, as well as the pedestrians. And if they think that they're at risk of getting caught, they will drive safer, and they will slow down and be more conscious of what they're doing. And so I think that the license plate display is of crucial importance.
Thank you very much. I'm a state senator, so I don't, I'm not familiar with, I've heard about Priscilla's law. I don't know if the city council has the authority to mandate licensing at the city level.
I don't think they do. This is a discussion.
Yep.
The Department of Transportation says they don't, and that's why I have a resolution to support your bill. But I think that's the only way it's going to get done.
Thank you. So it's a matter of which entity, state or city, has authority. I think it's the state. That's why we're advancing our bill. Happy to look at the councilman's bill to see if our bill doesn't include what he wants to have accomplished. But I honestly haven't undertaken that analysis, but I've heard of it. Let's talk afterward. Thank you. A question on anti-Semitism. Marisa, how is New York State comparing to other jurisdictions in terms of anti-Semitic incidents since October 7th?
I mean, most American, well, not most American Jews, but about a third of American Jews live in New York State. So anti-Semitic instances are quite high here. But if you look at it from the perspective of colleges and universities, there are Jews in many colleges and universities outside of municipalities that have large populations of Jews. And those students have reported firsthand to not just AJC, but other institutions and organizations as well, that they are feeling very frightened and very isolated. And this is a situation that I think we have to do a lot better on when it comes to working collaboratively with law enforcement, with elected officials at the local, state, and federal levels, with education departments and with DEI departments in colleges and universities, as well as the administrations in general. It is a very, very insidious thing that is permeating in a very frightening way across educational institutions. And I'm grateful to be working collaboratively with many organizations across New York, specifically here in New York City. It's called the New York Education Initiative, and it's a collaboration between several organizations, including AJC, the Jewish Education Project, ADL, and JCRC, among others. And we are hoping to address this issue in a wide-ranging way across K-12 schools, whether they are public schools or independent and private institutions. But we need to hear from community members as well. This is like I said before, a society-wide issue. It's a collaborative effort, and the problem is becoming greater and greater every year in New York City and across the state. But I think that there are many things that our legislators, including the senator, have enacted in the state legislature to address these issues, and they're working very collaboratively with organizations like AJC to continue to address this problem, society-wide problem that anti-Semitism is.
Thank you. A question from the floor. You could say your name and... Oh, mic isn't working? Okay.
Okay. Hi, my name's Ilan. We've heard a lot about wanting to make Upper West Side affordable, or the West Side in general affordable for people to rent. One of the largest expenses that we all see are things like insurance, property tax, utility bills that are all going up at crazy rates. What are we doing to make it affordable to be able to provide housing in New York so that we can lower rents and make everybody have a safe place to live?
Well, that is a really important question because we often hear about the creation of housing, but not about the creation of enough affordable housing. Ellen, what is your kind of overview on how we're doing in affordability?
Oh, sucky. So, I mean, look, part of the problem is that we've been relying on the private market to build affordable housing, and it's not necessarily their job, right? Like, it's really, I think, the government's job to, like, the biggest source of affordable housing comes from low-income housing tax credits, which comes from the IRS, which doesn't subsidize operating costs, right? So they can't get to low enough levels of affordability because they don't give the housing developer any money to keep the cost, the prices low enough. And I think we need to actually fund affordability programs. The insurance question, because the insurance costs are out of control, I think that the state legislature, or maybe it's the feds, I'm not sure, really needs to look at what's going on with these insurance companies, because I know from affordable housing providers that the property tax thing, right, a lot of affordable housing providers have tax breaks, maybe not enough, but the insurance has just skyrocketed over the last couple of years, and it can't be that the insurance costs have gone up. I think, there's some playing with the market and, squeezing it. I think it's more than inflation. I mean, what I'm hearing is it's more than inflation, and I'd be really curious to know whether, I know there was some talk about looking about whether the state could do some more regulation of the insurance market, so developers and people who own property aren't being hit with these huge insurance costs, because part of the reason part of the reason we're not building in New York, there are lots of reasons, like we make it, but part of the reason is the insurance costs have gone through the roof, making it very hard to build, and so we need to get those under.
Do you have a position on City of Yes and its affordability or lack of affordability?
As an individual or as legal
aid? As an
has,
individual.
Legal aid has no position. I have gone from, look, I don't think it has enough affordability, but it has a lot of things in it that I think are really important. I want to get rid of parking minimums. I think that we need to build more everywhere. And the fact that it targets communities that have done no building over the last, 20 years, I think is really important. I think that a lot of the zoning changes it's talking about are really important and need to happen. The one that the borough president was talking about, enabling the conversion of office buildings that were built after 1960, I forget when, like doing something with all that empty real estate seems really smart. But I do think housing costs money. And I want to see the government putting more money. If they want affordability,
Absolutely.
You actually have to pay for it.
Absolutely.
It's not enough to say to the people who are doing these conversions, do a little bit of affordability, because all you get is a little bit of affordability and not actually reaching the people who really need it. So these programs are going to cost money, and they should cost money.
Thank you. Another question, were you satisfied?
I didn't hear an answer on property tax, which the city council tells me is your job, but then your office tells me is their job.
I can't answer that question, sorry.
That's why it was a question to my elected representatives.
Fair enough. Property taxes are an issue statewide because outside of New York City, they fund our school system. So there's always a lot of push to lower them. That's why the governor has, in the last two budgets, proposed cuts in property taxes. But there's a downside because it hurts our educational institutions. And, obviously, and there's a question right here about that, to what extent at all they're asking, do I support charter schools? I believe that a fundamental role of government is to provide for public education. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to pay for that. But in some places in the state, property taxes are so onerous that it's actually driving people out of their communities. I do believe, though, that we need to exercise some sort of veto over local communities, particularly those outside of New York City, that are blocking the creation of housing in a way that has been linked to, decades of racism and bias against certain communities, moving into certain towns and villages across New York City. I also strongly support what Ellen just said about government's role in subsidizing housing directly. That's why I'm glad we got that $100 million plus for the new supportive housing program for over 100 units over at in West Chelsea at the Bayview Women's Correctional Facility. But that's a drop in the bucket. We need a reinvigorated direct subsidy in the spirit of Mitchell Lama that built so many amazing apartments, including Manhattan Plaza here on the west side, and limited equity co-ops like Penn South, also in our district in Chelsea. The governor has an opportunity to do that, and we have one location where we could get that done, and Councilman Brewer, I think, has talked about that too, in and around the Penn Station neighborhood, where there's the potential for new affordable housing for a direct subsidy under the state of New York's watch. I'm hopeful that in our negotiations we can push the state toward that direction. And we also have an actual dedicated revenue stream to our public housing, which does not exist at the moment. And we're only getting drips and drabs from the state of New York, and basically the federal government isn't giving us any money. So yeah, the state and the federal government and the city need to be directly involved in the creation of affordable housing. There's a market failure. We can't rely on the market solely to produce affordable housing. We've seen under 421A that it's just not enough.
I just want to add that I have a bill that's pending that says Ward's Island, not Randall's Island, but Ward's Island could be just like Roosevelt Island. It could be all Mitchell Lama. It could be affordable, and we should be thinking about that. The last open land left in the Bowling
Actually, before I stop, I do have a thought about property taxes, which is, look, in New York City, we have 3 million units of housing, and 2 million, 2/3, are renters, 1/3 is owners. And most of them live in multifamily housing. And multifamily housing has higher property taxes than single family homes and co-ops and condos. And that means, and I think that's wrong, right? Like, I think there's a tax fairness because certainly property owners of multifamily housing pay more taxes, but they also pass those taxes on to their tenants, which means, some of the people who are less able to pay for the tax system are paying for the tax system. And so I do think that we have some fundamental fairness, and it may be that our government thinks that we should reward homeowners and not renters, but in New York, renters are the backbones of the community, and I think that there should be some efforts to make taxes more fair.
Agreed.
There's a lawsuit on this, as you probably know. Martha Stark initiated,
Yep.
and it's still pending the outcome, and it's not moved at all, but it should.
Yeah, the property tax commission that I guess it was under Mayor de Blasio and Speaker Johnson produced a report. There's been no action on it at the city or state level, but I'm hopeful that we eventually will address the issue. It's just that I guess the political tectonic plates are such that the issue has not yet moved at either level of government. Another question from the floor? Yes.
Hey there, my name is Henry Burbank. Thank you all for making yourselves available for this town hall. I am a bicyclist, and I have had some close encounters during my time riding in the city, riding legally in the bike lane, but moving at a reasonably fast pace when pedestrians have walked out unexpectedly, when the lights have not been in favor of them, or when they've been outside of a crosswalk. Most recently, this happened outside of the Little Island Park, where the Little Island entrance intersects with West Side Highway bike path. And I'm curious, I want to ride responsibly, I don't want to hurt anybody, but I'm curious, especially in those areas of high traffic and high pedestrian, bicyclist, other recreational user interaction, what is the city doing to make it safer for everybody?
Well, I'll say that from my vantage point, again, state official here, I think, the creation of more bike lanes makes it safer for cyclists. Protected bike lanes are safer for cyclists. Literally outside of my office on 26th Street, the first city bike fatality occurred. A pretty young man named Dan Hadenbeg, who was 36 years old, was struck by a bus and died, left 2 young children. That was in 2018, I believe. Since then, there is a protected bike lane on 26th Street. Councilmember, any thoughts on what can make it safer?
No, I think that the city has a plan that has not been implemented, as you know, in terms of bike lanes and bus lanes. And so that plan has to be implemented. It's been pending for some time. But you were in a bike lane if you have Little Island, so even that is challenging. I have friends who ride, and they're concerned because motorcycles and bikes that are not supposed to be in the bike lane are in the bike lane. Or you're also saying pedestrians need to be more vigilant. And so there is a whole discussion. There's no discussion about this topic, I think. I think we need more, I have to say, from the mayor or from the city council and from the state. The pedestrians, bicyclists, and vehicles, we all need to pay a lot more attention. And I take your word, I understand what you're saying.
And on 9th Avenue, there's even horses in the bike lane. That's
another whole topic with the horses.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic. But bike lanes should be for bikes only, but we have to make it certain that their bikes go in the right direction, they stay in the lane, and don't go on the sidewalks, for sure. Danielle, any thoughts on it?
No, I think this symposium brought forth some really solid ideas around street infrastructure that would be helpful to all of that, right? The issues of the pedestrians and the cyclists, as well as the micro-mobility.
Question from the floor, how about there?
Hi, I was wondering, my name is Fortified. As a religious Jew, I was walking on Labor Day from 22nd Street to 34th Street, and I happened to walk, it was on Fifth Avenue, I happened to walk at the opposite Fifth Avenue Broadway to Broadway. Only later that day I found out that there was an anti-Israel rally happening on Fifth Avenue. And I can only think afterwards, and I keep thinking about this, what would have happened if I would have walked on Fifth Avenue? I was wondering what your message is to me and to other religious Jews walking up the kippah.
It's really heartbreaking to think that is a situation that you or anyone has to confront in their own city, on their way home or on their way to school. It's outright unacceptable. Marisa, how often do you hear that?
Too often, and it's not just an issue that's happening in the city, as I said earlier. It's happening a lot on college campuses. I hear it from younger and younger folks all around the state, not just in New York City. And we want Jewish youth to be proud of who they are, but there is a real tangible fear that they are feeling, and that's why it's so important for this for combating and dismantling anti-Semitism to be a society-wide effort, that we're all in together and working together both at the grassroots and grass tops level. And I just want to make sure, I said this during my presentation, but to the gentleman in the audience and everyone, there are different ways that you can report anti-Semitism, whether it's to local or federal law enforcement, to your college administrators, and social media platforms. So we have a guide, and I encourage you to take a look at it and use it. It's gotten a lot worse since October 7th, unfortunately, and I don't know that we can be confident that it'll get better in the short term, but we're working really hard to dismantle anti-Semitism and combat it in a way that addresses anti-Semitism in the 21st century, where we're seeing it really disguised as anti-Israel animus.
How deep does it go in your mind? Like, nobody is born anti-Semitic or full of racism or homophobia or transphobia. Are we doing enough with civic education?
No. No, we are not. And it's difficult. I've heard, that it's, when it comes to whether it's the state education department or the New York State legislature, there is not such a symbiotic relationship there. But it's not just about legislation, it's about policy change, it's about including Jews in DEI initiatives, in ethnic studies initiatives and programs. That's an issue that we're seeing and that we've seen for years now in California. It will likely make its way to New York. But Jews need to be included in these education initiatives. Not enough people know about Jews. They think they know about Jews, especially in New York, because they feel like they see them everywhere. But Jews are a very diverse people, not just religiously, but culturally and ethnically. And the education systems really need to do a much better job, especially confronting extremism and conspiracy theories that are unfortunately hurting a lot of Jewish students right now.
Thank you. A quick question from the card. Why was congestion pricing halted and will it get put back on track? Talk about street safety and safety for cyclists and pedestrians. Lawsuits, pressure from upstate in New Jersey, are those the reasons? I think those are part of the reasons. I'm happy to say that I intervened on the lawsuit in New Jersey by Governor Phil Murphy, who is suing New York State for our congestion pricing program. The case was assigned, believe it or not, to a judge whose wife was an appointee of Phil Murphy to the New Jersey Port Authority. So I wrote an angry letter to the presiding judge and pointed out the conflict of interest. The presiding judge wrote an angry letter back to me and said, it's none of your business. But he did remove the judge. So who was recused, and now we have a better judge in that case. But I'm very hopeful that we'll get congestion pricing back on track. I say, mend it, don't end it. We have $1 billion at stake. We have federal money at stake. We have a federal review at stake that took over 4 years. And we have over $600 million already, as I mentioned earlier, committed to the camera infrastructure that's ready to be turned on as soon as the governor gives her okay. I am hopeful. I'm hopeful. But we'll keep fighting. Question from the floor. Yes, Jake.
My name is Robert Koschel. Thank you for having this town hall meeting here. I've lived on the Upper West Side and West Side for a total of 30 years. And I just have some thoughts about e-bike and safety issues around that for pedestrians and for the people who are riding e-bikes for recreational purposes and also for people who are earning a living with e-bikes. I think that e-bikes may not be the right term for them anymore. They have a motor. So just like a gas motorbike, these are really electric motorbikes. And I think we would all be safer if they were regulated as motorbikes, with standardization for lighting, front and rear, for insurance requirements, which I think has come up before, and also for licensing, not just for the actual vehicle, but for the person who's riding it. And I'm not talking about making anything more difficult for people who are trying to earn a living with e-bikes, just to be safer for everybody. People earn a living driving a cab, they're licensed insured. They earn a living driving Uber, they're licensed insured. People who are earning a living on an electric motorbike considering how much the technology has changed since these were introduced, the ones that have throttles, where the pedals are really just simply a place to rest your feet, are electric motorbikes. Pedal assisted, sure, that's something separate, but if you're gonna get on a motorbike in a public street, interact with cars and pedestrians, you should be licensed, insured, and have a level of education which would come along with licensure. You know, I don't think that we should sacrifice public safety for anybody who's trying to earn a living. Everybody should be able to earn a living, but balanced with public safety.
I think that's well said. Daniel, any response?
You're absolutely right that the mopeds versus the e-bikes has increased dramatically since the pandemic, when the demand for food delivery went up and folks were trying to get places faster. They started using more of the mopeds that go up to 30 miles an hour. And absolutely, and the bills that I discussed and that you discussed, Senator, and I think Assemblymember Rosenthal, would get at a lot of what you said around insurance, registration, and liability around driving a vehicle like that.
Thank you. Another question or comment from the floor? Do any of my colleagues have mics? I don't see them. Where? Okay, great.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Thank you for putting this town hall. To continue on the conversation of the motorbikes or e-bikes, I'm wondering what is happening or what you guys are doing about Riverside Park, because I go there a lot, and every time I go, there's a motorbike that's speeding through. And at one time, they passed right by me. And I also bike, and I try to follow the law, but it's a huge problem, as we're all talking about here. But I'm wondering what is being done. I called the police because it's happened like 5 times in like a period of 2 weeks. And I called the police, and the guy just told me, "Oh, well, you don't know how many motorbikes or e-bikes I have here." We try to go once in a while, and somebody goes in there and parks their car there, and tries to stop them. And that was it. That was the response I got. So I'm wondering what's being done, because it's a problem in our streets and also like in the park where you go to, you're not paying attention as much, I think, as you will be on the street. And there's a lot of, people with kids and, so yes.
Well, I think what we're talking about in terms of registering commercial e-bikes would go to that, hopefully address some of that problem. But we need enforcement as it stands now. And you've witnessed some of the enforcement, but it's sporadic, right? And it's not consistent or sufficient. So we can continue to press for greater enforcement.
I also think that the Parks Department needs more PEP officers, people who do actual enforcement. Because what you're talking, I've seen that, those are actual motorcycles. Yeah. Motorcycles in Riverside Park. So they are quote unquote either illegal or supposed to be licensed. It's not like an e-bike which hasn't gotten to be passed a law to be licensed. They're actual motorcycles. And it's, so they need to be arrested and off the streets. So it's enforcement, which is different than needing to be licensed. We're all writing letters, screaming and yelling. I've seen it myself. I know it's horrible. I'm very aware of it.
We've been talking with colleagues about the need for camera enforcement of bikes, particularly motorbikes or motorcycles. You need licenses first, but the illegal bikes in Riverside Park, the illegal motorcycles in Riverside Park, in theory, could be subject to enforcement by cameras. So I think the most neutral way to enforce our traffic laws is through speed cameras. So I've been a staunch supporter of more cameras on our streets in New York City. Thank you. Next question, yes.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot to everybody in the dais and everybody who is in the auditorium. I just have to get to what I see as clearly, you just almost got there, Brett, but I rode a bicycle here, and I do follow the laws. But just like, and I laud and applaud all of the work that all of you have done with legislation and laws and trying to do things like that. But the elephant in the room, standing on a thin blue line, is that the NYPD is not enforcing the laws. Just like the ordinances to not spit on the sidewalk, and to curb your dog, and to not feed the pigeons, and to go 25 miles an hour or less. None of these laws are being enforced by the NYPD. I stood next to a cop on 8th Avenue who was there for a street fair, and we watched someone ride an illegal two-stroke motorcycle that did not have a license and cannot be licensed. He wasn't wearing a helmet. He was going about 40 miles an hour the wrong way on 8th Avenue, and he made a left-hand turn going the wrong way onto 51st Street and parked on the sidewalk, and I turned to the cop and said, "Aren't you going to do anything?" And he said, "What do you want me to do?" And I said, "Your job." He said, "What do you expect me to do?" And I said, "Well, you could at least give him a warning, if not write anything." He said, "We're underfunded. We're not allowed to do anything." And then he went and got in his car. And the two of them sat in their car, and he wouldn't even talk to me about it. Ever since the bail reform law went in, it is impossible for me in Midtown to get an NYPD officer to do anything.
Thank you. Another question from or comment from the floor? Yes?
Yes, Gail grew up maybe.
She almost made it off the stage, folks.
I've lived in the Mitchell for over 50 years. The last 6 years, every year we get a small increase amounting to over 30%. But because it's increase on top of increase, it's more like 40%. This year, we're told we are getting another 20% increase, which is like 60% over 7 years. That seems like a lot for Mitchell-Lama.
Are you city or state, Mitchell-Lama?
Pardon?
Are you a city or state, Mitchell-Lama?
I got a tower. What is that? That's city. Okay. During COVID, we had 3 stores that were paying rent. Because they couldn't pay the rents, we had to subsidize them. When I told the managing agent they could get help, so she answered me, if they don't want to get help, they don't have to. So I said, so why do I have to pay? Because they're not paying their fair share.
We can talk afterwards, certainly. I know the 3 stores, I live around the corner, and generally, because you're co-op or rental, you're rental? Yeah, you're co-op, right? That's what I thought. So there's a little bit, it's up to the shareholders and the board, we know your board members, to be able to negotiate and try to come up with some different ways of assessing you as shareholders, because the rent isn't up, it's the maintenance that's up. So we should talk afterwards.
Thank you, Councilmember. Now, quickly. She's dashing off the stage. She has a busy day. Question from the cards. I know we have a lot of e-bike questions. This is about traffic too. There are still too many modified mufflers blasting their loudest in the neighborhood. This is especially true in the middle of the night, going down 5th Avenue. Is there any enforcement? That seems to be a theme here. We can do to crack down on these rogue drivers. We already have the laws to prevent this, and that's absolutely true. We did pass a bill in Albany called the Sleep Act, and it prevents the sale of modified mufflers in the city of New York. My colleague Andrew Gennard wrote it, I co-sponsored it. We're trying to get those mufflers from being sold, but it is, and it does come down to enforcement, and it is very difficult for NYPD to catch a rogue muffler in the act. But I'm open to ideas. If people have thoughts, one is sound cameras, which that was passed in the city council, right?
Yes, we have two of them. I think we're the only neighborhood that has two. They won't tell us where the fuck they are.
Okay.
We have them.
But we're going to try to get more sound cameras throughout the Upper West Side and the entire district. I think that's something we can all work on together. Let us know if you have an idea for a location. Another question? Yes, Jake.
Yes, I have submitted a card to you, and I just...
Oh, you submitted a card, I'm sorry.
Yes, and I'm afraid we're not going to get to it, but my topic is on something we haven't talked about at all, and that is home care in New York State, that's paid for by Medicaid. I'm an advocate, I help people to get Medicaid and home care, and as you probably know, they are all administered by privately run, managed long-term care plans who are doing an absolutely awful job, in giving people the hours of home care that they need. There are reasons for that. The state does not give the plans enough money to run the program the way they should be run. Anybody who needs more than 7 or 8 hours of home care a day, the plans are losing money. And rather than going to the state and saying, we can't do this, we need more assistance, they take the clients and they try to box them into as few hours as they can get away with. There are many advocates dealing with this, but I'm a frontline worker. I hear about and see the patients who are sitting there unable to change their wet diapers, unable to get out of their chairs, unable to get their meals. And for those people who don't have an advocate to appeal that process, they wind up not getting what they need. And it's so rigid that, and I've done appeals for 9 years, and they're getting tougher and tougher, and we wind up going for a state fair hearing, and that everybody gets funneled into administrative law judges. There are clearly not enough judges to even address it. They are also diverting people to another program called the NHTD program, which is a waiver program. That's not what it's supposed to be for. So, in my opinion, there's a terrible logjam, and it boils down to people, many thousands of people in New York State not getting adequate home care.
Thank you. No, thank you so much. I strongly support it. There's legislation that Senator Gustavo Rivera, I think, introduced very recently around CDPAP reform to provide more funding. And there's an initiative in Albany around the whole home care shortage of both workers, because they're not being paid enough, and funding. And we really have to work together and press the governor in next year's budget to put more money toward home health care aids. It is God's work that you're doing, and I'm very grateful, as I'm sure the families of the loved ones who you support. Thank you. Another question from the floor. Come on, colleagues. Anyone over here? Who's Evan?
Hi, I'm talking about something we haven't spoken about. I want to know more about policies around the migrant families that sit on our streets with so many children, some of whom may be in school, may not, and I want to know if we're still doing, according to the mayor's plan, 60 days, and then they have to be uprooted, which totally destroys the
unconscionable.
It's
Absolutely
unconscionable, destroys any continuity in schools, any possibilities. I see these people every day. I'd like to know, how are they living, and what can we do about it? It's a disaster.
I share your heartache over seeing young children who should be in school selling candy on the subway. You see it almost every day. And I want to thank District 3 in particular. Let's give them a round of applause for organizing parents to support and provide an infrastructure and a network to provide support for these migrant families. Most of their support is coming at the school level and in an unofficial capacity because frankly, City Hall has not been terribly sympathetic to their plight. I have legislation in Albany that I carry with Assemblymember Catalina Cruz to invalidate the mayor's 30 and 60-day eviction rule. Because frankly, you know, some children, as I learned recently, last year, some kids, because they were evicted from the shelters, because of the mayor's policy, one child moved to 4 different schools during the school year because they were moved around like widgets by DHS. So we have to stop that. They need stability. We have to put the resources. Albany needs to do its part. I asked the mayor, by the way, during the budget hearings up in Albany last year, Mr. Mayor, how much money do you need? He didn't have an answer. So there is truly a lack of, I guess, of clarification on the city's part as to what the state should be doing, but we need to support the mayor and provide more resources. I agree with that, but we also need to know how much they need and what they're doing with it, and they need to end this 30-60-day eviction policy, in my humble opinion. Another question, we're going to be wrapping up soon. Anyone down front, any of my colleagues down front, can you come over here, Jake? These folks didn't get a question answered.
Something completely different. Would it be possible?
But you need a question answered?
Yeah, I was in front. I can't remember there.
Okay, well then you're next. Okay?
Would it be possible to lower the decibel level on emergency vehicles, even just a little bit?
Yes. There are city council bills to that effect. I think Councilman Brewer carries one. And we hear this complaint a lot. It's a state issue, but let's circle back around and see what we can do at the state level on that front. The city has been working on it. We hear you. We get a lot of calls about that very issue. I understand it as well where I live. I'm in an ambulance zone. I'll tell you something else that could help: congestion pricing to end the gridlock of traffic. And so that those ambulances don't have to pull their alarms as often and as loudly as they do. But yes.
They run lights and sirens even when they have
Yeah.
reason to.
I was with one anecdote. I was with I chanced upon a man who was having what I thought was a heart attack on 24th Street near Penn South, and I was with him and a number of other people as he was writhing in pain on the sidewalk. We couldn't do anything for him. It took the emergency personnel 37 minutes to arrive, and I called the other day. He's okay, but I think congestion pricing would hopefully ease some of that gridlock and also make our lives a little better by reducing the noise of emergency responders. But I hear you on that. Let's circle back around. Final question, sir. I think have we reached we're a little bit over.
No, that's why I ran over there.
Sorry about that. And by the way, thank you for all of your questions. We're going to go through these and hopefully be able to put responses on our website. We really do appreciate all your good questions and comments.
Tommy McInnes, I live on 42nd Street on the west side between 8th and 9th. When I get out of the subway on 8th Avenue and I got to walk across the north side of the street, they got a shed and they got drug dealing going on in the shed. When I come in the subway station, even before I get up, sometimes, I used to be at Dwayne Reed there and there's a doorway. Sometimes you see folks sitting there just doing the drugs, smoking crack or pulling out a K2 on the joint, whatever. And it's a gauntlet that happens regularly. When coming up this way, when I get out of the subway, I walk on the bus lane just when I don't gotta walk in the scaffolding. I mean, okay, I heard what DA Bragg said about homeless people, mental illness. Yeah, I get it, but the guy selling shouldn't have that same, concern, sympathy. I mean, what would it take to just get a midtown no precinct to make that a post? Put someone there, and then the sale won't happen.
I think, I think that's not a bad suggestion. We often will relay problem, hotspots to the local police precinct. Daniel, do you have a thought on troubled spots and how, your institution might address them?
Sure. We're part of a coalition that the Garment District Alliance and the District Attorney's Office have brought together specifically around the 8th Avenue corridor and exactly the issues that you're talking about. We come together weekly to talk about those issues, and it's a multi-fold project. It has to do with the physical infrastructure that facilitates some of that, like scaffolding, but then also the law enforcement aspect too, and how to address folks who are engaging in those behaviors. They did a massive outreach effort with the navigators that DA Bragg talked about that work for an organization called The Bridge, and I believe they were able to get 39 people placed in emergency housing in a very short amount of time. I don't want to misquote, but like a month or two, which is pretty remarkable. So I can just say that there's a concerted effort with multiple agencies involved. The mayor's senior advisor on mental illnesses at those meetings, and we're, folks are trying to figure out how to move the needle. I hear you on the drug dealing, and that's certainly something that's discussed all the time. And maybe I'm happy to have further conversations, and maybe we can find ways to be part of that solution when the community court opens back up, because folks will be coming through our doors specifically who may be arrested on those types of charges.
Thank you, Danielle. And let us know, my team's here and me personally, that spot specifically. Okay, one more question. That's it. This is it. Final one. Okay, and they're going to kick us out. Okay.
Thank you. I'd like to know what is happening with buses, the connection from one bus to another. There are some streets where if you want to select bus, you have to walk. There's no connection, for example, between the M72, and I know it's the east side you're going to say, and the 2nd Avenue bus select. You have to go to 67th Street.
Oh, that's the east side.
Okay. West side, all right. How about why are bus stops left in the middle of the sidewalk now? They used to be at the ends.
Let us know. That is something we deal with the MTA. Please, if there's a bus stop that you want moved, let us know.
Okay, and also, besides that, why aren't there stops that were moved during construction on the block?
Yeah, why are they
Many
moved
of
back?
them have never been put back.
You know why? Because people have not, I think in many instances, complained about it.
I called 311 about that.
Okay, go to your elected official too. It's good to have the paper trail with 311, but go to your elected official, me and or your city elected officials, we can address those issues.
Okay, and there was one goal I remember years ago that we were supposed to have for buses in the subway system we have it, where you have the oncoming buses, the schedule listed. There are so few stops that have that. They never reach that goal. And also, why Link New York City was supposed to be free throughout the city?
Yeah.
It doesn't connect anywhere, and the MTA used to have free Wi-Fi on the buses, totally discontinued. What's going on with these?
Okay,
things?
those are great questions and we can follow up with those. Yeah, thank you. No, we need to press them just like we do other agencies and authorities.
Not just e-bikes, not just low-rent
Yep.
housing, but some other subjects too. And you could give us an
Absolutely.
that we could, when we put in for a reservation, we could put down our concerns, and maybe you could make it more equal, the discussion tonight.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Fair enough. I'm glad we got to you. Thank you very much, everyone. Really enjoyed your questions and comments. Thank you to our presenters from the American Jewish Council Legal Aid and Midtown Community Justice Center, and thank you to my colleagues in elective office for spending some time with us this afternoon. Have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you so much.
Okay, the town hall is ended. There was not allowed to ask more questions, so I'll try to approach them later. And I will provide a separate input. Thanks everybody for watching.